Chapter 178. Don't be dissatisfied because of the Alliance's restrictions on you. It's because we've entrusted too much to you. Your astonishing rate of growth has given us hope of success. If you can fully utilize the eternal and creator throne of God and the sun-moon divine snail shield, these two supreme divine weapons, then even the demon emperor may not be able to contend against you. Long Haochin silently nodded. Grandfather Yang, I've never blamed the Alliance. I know everyone is doing this for my own good. Don't worry, I'll definitely pay attention to my own safety and won't easily take risks. Yang Haohin smiled faintly and said, That's good. No matter what, although you disobeyed the military order today, your performance also helped us obtain a great victory. This rare victory will further weaken the enemy's strength. It will make our dragon-resisting pass more stable. Old Long, how about this from now on? Let these two children participate in the Dragon-Resisting Pass military conference. Since we're training a successor, we might as well take a bigger step. Long Tianyi nodded and said, All right, I'm going to hold a military conference soon. You two come with me. Yang Haohin said to Long Tianyi, Old Long, the news that Long Haochin has the sun-moon divine snail shield is very sudden. I'm going to return to the Alliance. The Holy War has progressed to this point, so we have to consider the future. I'm going to convene a meeting with the leaders of the 6 temples. During this period of time, the dragon-resisting pass will have to rely on you. Long Tianyi and Yang Haohin have known each other for many years, so he immediately understood the meaning of his words. Without hesitation, he nodded and said, Don't worry, I'm here. If we take 10,000 steps back, if it really doesn't work, then we can only, at this point he paused. The two Knight of the Seal looked at each other with a bit of biting cold in their eyes. Long Haochin and Han Yu were shocked. Although Long Tianyi didn't say it clearly, they could hear some meaning from Long Tianyi's words. It seems that the Knights Templars still have a trump card that can contend against the demon army led by the 8 demon gods. 6,000 years of accumulation is really extraordinary. After a simple exchange with Yang Haohin, Long Tianyi brought Long Haochin and Han Yu to the Knights Templars Conference. There was no clear military division in the dragon-resisting pass. It was completely controlled by the Knights Templars. In other words, as a Knight of the Seal, Long Tianyi was equivalent to the military chief of the dragon-resisting pass. When Long Xingwu was still here, this position was originally passed on to his son by Long Tianyi. However, the relationship between Long Xingwu and his father was not very good. He had his own unique ideas. Therefore, after a period of time, he returned the power to command the army of the Knights Templars back to his father and went to pursue greater power. At this time, the big conference room could be said to be shining brightly. When Long Haochin and Han Yu followed Long Tianyi into the big conference room, they could see at least 20 knights on a golden pedestal and some high-ranking Knights Templars wearing at least legendary great armors. Long Tianyi's authority in the dragon-resisting pass was unquestionable. As soon as he entered the door, all the knights stood up, their right fist hitting the left side of their chest, issuing a resounding metallic sound. Long Tianyi brought Long Haochin and Han Yu to the main seat. He first gestured to the high-ranking generals to sit down, and then he himself took the lead and sat down. Long Haochin and Han Yu, the two brothers, naturally did not have a seat. They just stood behind Long Tianyi. However, at this time, Long Haochin had become the focus of everyone's attention. The knight on a golden pedestal was an outstanding knight among the Holy Knight. They were quite familiar with each other. On the back of each golden base battle armor was the name of a powerful Holy Knight, and Long Haochin was obviously not familiar with these veteran Holy Knight. However, on the battlefield before, Long Haochin could be said to have bloomed the most dazzling brilliance. The shock brought by the 7-colored golden light, the valiance of killing 2 demon lords, and the heroic feat of mobilizing the morale of all the Knight of the Dragon-Resisting Pass. All of these were deeply remembered in the hearts of these high-level Knights Templars. Therefore, Although they did not know who this newly promoted knight on a golden pedestal was, they all unanimously cast him a friendly gaze. After seeing everyone sit down, Long Tianyin said in a deep voice, "Today we obtained an unexpected victory, once again defusing the demon's attack. I see the glory of the knight in everyone. Let me introduce you to the two people behind me. Han Yu, I believe you have all met him. He is your junior, and also the only grandson of the Holy Knight Elder Han Q, who is currently overseeing the Alliance and handling all kinds of affairs. After my discussion with the Alliance Master, from today onwards, he is also qualified to join all military meetings of the Dragon Resisting Pass as an observer." None of the knight opened their mouth. They just silently nodded. Not to mention Han Yu's identity as the grandson of the Holy Knight Elder Han Q, his own performance after the start of the Holy War was enough for these high-level generals to approve of him, courageously killing the enemy, properly commanding. At the age of less than 30, he had already become a 7th Order Temple Knight, so it was not surprising that he received special treatment from the temple. Everyone could see that Long Tianyin wanted to cultivate Han Yu to become the main reserve talent of the Knights Templars. With such outstanding achievements, it was very likely that he would become the next Knight of the Seal in the near future. Han Yu took a step forward, respectfully performed a standard knight's salute to everyone present, and then retreated behind Long Tianyin. Long Tianyin turned his gaze to Long Haochen and said, "This is the newly promoted Gold Essence Knight. He is wearing the number 12 Gold Essence base battle armor. I believe everyone has just seen his performance on the battlefield. As for him, I can't introduce him to you now. You can call him Jingjin number 12. The strength that he possesses, including the powerful shield that everyone saw on the battlefield just now, were all obtained by his own ability, not by the temple's support. I announce that he will temporarily take the position of the Holy Knight Elder and command the Mithril Foundation Knight in the pass." As soon as this announcement was made, there was a sudden burst of discussion. Even Long Haochen himself was shocked. He had never thought that his grandfather would actually entrust such an important task to him. The Holy Knight Elder? Among the Knights Templars, apart from the few Knight of the Seal and the Elders of the Temple, his position was already the most respected. An elder sitting next to Long Tianyin said, "Temple Master, isn't this a little too hasty? Moreover, we are not familiar with this newly promoted knight on a golden pedestal." This elder was one of the few people present who did not wear armor. He had short white hair, was tall, and wore a long white robe. When he opened and closed his eyes, golden light shone. His aura was completely restrained. Even with Long Haochen's spiritual power, he couldn't detect his true cultivation. There was a faint layer of twisted light film around his body. Long Tianyin said to the elder, "Brother He, this decision was made after I discussed with the Alliance Master. Jingjin number 12 is a retired demon hunter and has made an extremely special contribution to the Alliance. He is completely worthy of this position." The white-robed elder nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. From the way Long Tianyin addressed him, it could be seen that this elder with the surname he held a high position in the Knights Templars. Long Tianyin turned to the other high-ranking generals and said in a deep voice, "The position of Holy Knight Elder has always been held by Han Q, but all these years Han Q has mostly been assisting the Alliance Master in handling some affairs in the Alliance. He has not been able to truly lead the Holy Knight Regiment into battle. I know that everyone here, especially the knight on a golden pedestal, may not be convinced by Jingjin number 12. The temple will never make a hasty decision. I will only mention one of his contributions. If anyone here thinks that he has contributed more to the Alliance than he has, you can bring it up for everyone to discuss. If it is true, then he will be the acting Holy Knight Elder." After hearing Long Tianyin's words, the conference room instantly quietened down. As a Holy Knight, Long Tianyin had an extremely high authority in the Knights Templars. Moreover, the Knights Templars had always been under his command. Therefore, when they saw that he was a little angry, no one dared to question him anymore. Moreover, Long Tianyin said that the acting Holy Knight elders' contributions would be more important, who here had not made great contributions to the Temple League and the Knights Templars. They also wanted to hear what kind of great contributions this newly promoted Jingjin number 12 Holy Knight Elder had made to be able to catch up from behind. After looking around the room, Long Tianyin said, "Not long ago, Jingjin number 12 led his team into the depths of the demons and killed Snake Demon God Andamari, who was ranked 72nd among the 72 demon god pillars of the demons." At this point he paused. In the conference room, there were already knights' eyes that showed disapproval. Killing a demon god was a great contribution, but Snake Demon God Andamari was only ranked last. Although this contribution was great, it was a bit far-fetched to say that it surpassed all the advanced knight present. Long Tianyin continued. Moreover, he destroyed Andamari's demon god pillars. In other words, from now on, there will no longer be a snake demon god among the demons. Boom! The room was in an uproar. Killing snake demon god was nothing, but destroying a demon god pillar was a completely different story. It had been 6,000 years since the Dark Age began. For 6,000 years, humans had never had a record of destroying a demon god pillar. They never expected that this Jingjin number 12 could actually do it. This was the first demon god pillar the humans had destroyed, and its significance was unparalleled. It meant that humans had finally found a way to destroy the demons' demon god pillars and shake the demons' foundation. This contribution was second to none in the entire Temple League, not to mention the Knights Templars present. The advanced knights' gaze towards Long Houchen had changed. Apart from curiosity, there was also a sense of respect for a powerhouse. Although they didn't know how Long Houchen did it, but to be able to do this, how could it be ordinary? Elder He, who spoke earlier, slowly stood up and clenched his right fist towards Long Houchen. "I, Deputy Temple Master of the Knights Templars, Holy Knight He Jun, apologize for my doubts just now. You have allowed the Knight's glory to spread across the land. The title of Holy Knight Long Houchen is well deserved." Long Houchen hurriedly returned the salute and said in a deep voice, "For the Knight's glory." All the knight present repeated his words in unison. "For the Knight's glory." This was the first time a member of the Knights Templars destroyed a demon god pillar. No one in the Temple League could surpass this achievement. As a knight, how could they not feel the glory? He Jun nodded at Long Houchen, then turned to Long Tianyin. "Temple Master, since Jingjin number 12 has made such a great contribution, I think we can remove the acting title and add the Deputy Temple Master title." What was a Holy Knight? It was the 9th grade knight who had not been recognized by the throne of God. This He Jun was a Holy Knight and also a Deputy Temple Master of the Knights Templars. Long Tianyin shook his head and said, "No need. The Alliance will not forget his contribution, and neither will we, the Knights Templars. His future position will wait until he is recognized by the throne of God. He is still too young. He is not suitable for a high position." Long Tianyin's words once again shocked the high-ranking generals. What did he mean by waiting until he is recognized by the throne of God? In other words, the owner of the throne of God of order and law, the knight of the seal of control and restraint, Long Tianyin had already determined that this Jingjin number 12 will be recognized by the throne of God in the future and become the 4th knight of the seal of the Knights Templars. This was not something that could be easily said. Even with Long Tianyin's identity, he would not easily say such words. He would not say it without absolute confidence. Moreover, he added that he was still too young. What was too young? How young? Long Houchen did not expect his grandfather to introduce him like this. He did not reveal his identity, but pushed him to the heart of the struggle within the Knights Templars. After a brief moment of discomfort, Long Houchen understood his grandfather's meaning. The purpose of Long Tianyin doing this was very simple. It was to build momentum for him, for his future. Whether it was Long Tianyin or Yang Haohen, They both said that in the future, he must take over the position of the Knight of the Temple Master. Currently, Long Houchen did not actually hold any meaningful position in the Knights Templars. In this case, even if he became a Knight of the Seal in the future, the degree of recognition within the Knights Templars would be very limited. The two Knight of the Seal wanted to train him to understand more about the Knights Templars and gain more recognition from the higher-ups of the Knights Templars. This was also the purpose of letting him temporarily take over the position of Holy Knight Temple Master. It was all to build momentum for him to take over the position in the future. Jun frowned slightly and asked subconsciously, "Temple Master, can I ask how old is Jingji number 12? Is he younger than the Starry Temple Master back then?" After a moment of silence, Long Tianyin said, "When he becomes a Knight of the Seal, everyone will know. For now, keep it a secret. What I said just now, also keep it a secret. All right, let's start today's meeting." After a series of promotions, from this moment on, Long Houchen had officially become the acting Holy Knight Temple Master. This also meant that he had his own place in the higher-ups of the Knights Templars. Long Tianyin pointed to an empty seat below him and gestured to Long Houchen. At this time, Long Houchen naturally couldn't refuse, so he could only sit down. Han, you also naturally stood behind Long Houchen, instead of staying behind Long Tianyin. Don't forget he was Long Houchen's Squire Knight. This also made everyone more curious about Long Houchen's identity. Some even thought that this person was really Holy Knight Han, Q Temple Master. Otherwise, why would Han Q's grandson, a rank 7 Temple Knight, follow him, and not stand behind Temple Master Long Tianyin, who had just announced that he was qualified to participate in the military meeting? The highest-level military meeting of the dragon-resisting mountain pass began. The generals had a clear division of labor, and the detailed battle statistics had already been summarized. This included their own casualties, the estimation of local casualties, the enemy's current troop deployment, and a series of detailed data. At this time, Long Houchen was just a bystander, but he understood why his grandfather brought him here, so he listened very seriously. With his amazing memory, he only needed to pay a little attention to remember all the data. In the previous battle, the Knights Templars' losses weren't that great. There were many wounded, but there weren't many who were seriously injured or killed. This was also because of the Knights Templars' own tactics. Because this was a war of attrition, the Knights Templars placed great importance on healing after a large number of casualties at the beginning of the Holy War. The wounded soldiers would immediately be replaced for treatment, and they wouldn't fight to the death. After all, although the total strength of the Knights Templars couldn't compare to the demons, the dragon-resisting mountain pass's natural stronghold didn't need too many soldiers to defend the pass. Not more than 20,000 people, fighting in cycles and reducing casualties as much as possible. This was the most fundamental strategy formulated by Long Tianyin. From the current situation, the reason the Knights Templars could last for so long was inseparable from this strategy. Of course, this strategy had its advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantage was that the soldiers' morale wasn't high, and it was difficult to deal a heavy blow to the enemy, so they could only passively take a beating. After listening to the summary statistics, Long Tianyin said in a deep voice, "According to our investigation, the demons' food supply has reached the point where they are straining to make ends meet. Today's attack and defense battle was to continue weakening our strength, and at the same time to create food for their own side. However, they didn't expect the situation to change. The result was that they were defeated and didn't receive any food supplies. Therefore, I estimate that after the demons adjust, they will soon carry out the next attack. Therefore, everyone must be vigilant and continue to defend. The demons still have about 23 regiments outside the pass, but they are all quite strong. Especially until today, the 3 Emperors' Legion have never moved, and have always been a huge threat to us. Due to the pressure brought by them, we can only adopt a passive defense strategy. But now, as the demons are affected by the environment and their strength is constantly weakening, it's time for us to change our strategy. from the original passive defense to a combination of offense and defense. Hearing Long Tianing's words, the expressions of all the high-ranking officers of the Knight Temple unexpectedly became excited. Not a single one of them objected, and from the looks of it, they seemed to be rubbing their fists in anticipation. It was no wonder that they were like this. They were suppressed in the dragon-resisting mountain pass for a whole year and a half. They were always in a passive defense, and the demons attacked whenever they wanted, while the Knights Templars didn't even counterattack once under the command of Long Tianing. Today's battle was not only a victory for the Knights Templars, but it also provoked the fighting spirit in the hearts of the Knight Templars. They were already somewhat unable to hold back, and when Long Tianing said that they would change their strategy, they naturally felt a strong sense of excitement. Deputy Temple Master Hejun said, "Temple Master, I agree with the combination of offense and defense, but we still need to think about it at length. We must not be careless. Of course, protecting the dragon-resisting mountain pass is the most important thing for us." Long Tianing formulated a passive defense plan, although the Knights Templars who were in favor of the war didn't agree with it, with his position in the Knights Templars, who would dare to oppose it, and Hejun himself was his most staunch supporter. After a year and a half, the facts proved that Long Tianing's strategy was correct. Although the soldiers of the dragon-resisting mountain pass were suppressed very sullenly, the casualties of the Knights Templars were always maintained within a safe range, and the casualties of the demons were constantly increasing. Especially after they were cut off from food supplies and had to rely on eating corpses as food, their losses were even greater. The harsh environment was also playing a greater and greater role in weakening them. Long Tianing nodded and said, "I have an idea, let's discuss it. With our current situation, as long as Samakina doesn't mobilize the 3 Emperor's Legion, our defense will not have any problems. Even if he mobilizes them, if we fight to the death, the possibility of both sides suffering losses is higher. As brother," he said, "even if we want to attack the enemy, we must ensure that the dragon-resisting mountain pass is firmly defended. At the same time, we must avoid casualties as much as possible. Therefore, I suggest that we adopt a blitzkrieg strategy, using the most elite Knights Legion to launch a sneak attack on the enemy, effectively killing and injuring the enemy, while at the same time ensuring our own safety, thus restraining the demons, weakening their strength one step further." Hejun nodded. "I agree with the Lord's suggestion. It is impossible to mobilize a large number of troops to fight the demons head-on. That is equivalent to giving up our own advantages. But using small elite troops to launch a sneak attack on the demons is very desirable." Long Tianing said, "Everyone can express their own views. If you have any good ideas, you can speak them out and discuss." The following process was not about discussing ideas, but set off a climax of requests for war. Almost all the generals expressed their willingness to lead elite troops to launch a sneak attack on the demons and inflict heavy losses on the enemy. The atmosphere of the whole meeting became unprecedentedly enthusiastic. Strategy and tactics were gradually perfected and formulated, but the real executors could only be a few people. And among these executors, there were Long Houchen and Han Yu. The night was pervasive, and the whistling northern wind made whining sounds from time to time. In the demon camp, except for the 8 demon god pillars that were still flashing with light, it was quiet. In such cold weather, even the most domineering demons would shrink in their own tents. The number of patrolling soldiers was also very small. After all, it had always been the demons who attacked, while the Knights Templars were like a turtle shell, never leaving the stronghold. This naturally formed a kind of inertia. The cold outside the dragon-resisting mountain pass could reach below -40 degrees at night. Drops of water would turn into ice. Even if they ran outside to pee, they might turn into an icicle before they even landed on the ground. This kind of cold had a great impact on both the demons and humans. In order to take care of the northern battlefield, the demons deployed almost all the thick tents they could to this side. As much as possible, every demon soldier slept in a tent. In the beginning, it was really a bit difficult. Millions of elite troops were gathered here, and it was really not easy for the barren demons to have tents to sleep in. But as the Holy War continued, the number of casualties continued to increase, and at the same time, the demons were constantly changing and redeploying troops. Now, they were finally able to barely squeeze through the army besieging the dragon resisting Mountain Pass. A tent of 20 square meters could sleep at least 10 demons. Even the bear demons had to squeeze in 4 or 5. It was definitely rubbing shoulders. However, this also had its advantages. At least they could keep each other warm. The dusty joint tents stretched for dozens of miles, and the tents were very close to each other, crisscrossing densely to resist as much as possible the cold wind. The demon god of necromancy, Samakina, was worthy of being one of the 5 pillars of the demons. He did not let the high-grade demons live in the core of the camp, but instead let the higher-grade demons live in the periphery, while the inner part was for the relatively low-grade demons. Among them, the 3 major armies of the God Emperor were stationed in 3 directions of the joint camp. This was obviously not just because the high-grade demons were better at resisting the cold, but more importantly, once the humans really took action against the demon camp, it would be easier for the high-grade demons on the periphery to react, and they would be more able to resist the humans' attack. This arrangement also made Samakina unanimously supported. Not long after the bear demons, Sahaba and his 3 companions entered the tent. The 4 bear demons' movements were very consistent, huddling together in the tent, which was quite small for them, and each bear demon covered his stomach with his hand. Hungry, the bear demons, who were huge in size and had amazing defensive power, were like a fortress on the battlefield, and their appetite was also extremely amazing. However, they had not eaten their fill for several days. The stored corpses were almost finished, and today the 4 of them only got the thigh of a mad demon. For them, this was not even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. However, food was too scarce, and they could not do anything about it. With the 8 demon gods here as deterrents, who would dare to cause trouble? Wouldn't that be courting death? Therefore, as soon as the sky turned dark, they quickly went into the tent to rest. The situation of Sahaba and the others was still considered good. They belonged to the God Emperor's 4th army, and relatively speaking, they were definitely given priority treatment in the entire demon army. Some of the lower-grade demons had even not eaten for 1 or 2 days. Originally, the demon army should have been able to replenish enough food in the previous battle. But who would have thought that the sudden change would force Samakina to order a retreat? The number of corpses that could really be brought back was very small, completely not enough to make up for the shortage of food, and no one knew when the next batch of food would arrive from the rear. The high-ranking demons also knew that if this continued, this army would die here sooner or later. However, it was an order from His Majesty the Demon Emperor himself. So what could they do? From the start of the Holy War until now, in just a short period of 1.5 years, the total number of demons in the army of tens of millions had been reduced by 1/3, and millions of demons had died in battle. Although the blow to the 6 major human temples was also huge, in terms of the number of casualties, the demons were at least 5 times more than the humans. Moreover, this ratio was constantly increasing. The demon emperors, heaven-defying demon dragons, moon devils, and star demons had never appeared on the battlefield, and this became the biggest problem restricting the demon army from breaking through. Many demons' generals and demon gods did not understand. In their opinion, as long as the demon emperor was willing to fight in person, then it would not be a problem to break any human fortress. How could they know that the demon emperor had never thought of exterminating the entire human race, but only wanted to greatly weaken the strength that humans had accumulated for thousands of years? The 4 bear demons huddled together, groaning. When they were hungry, their bodies would be weak. Moreover, the weather outside was so cold. Even if their bodies could withstand the harsh cold, the cold weather would also increase the consumption of their physical strength, which would make them hungry even faster. Sahaba let out a low roar. I'm starving. If this goes on, this father will go out and kill a few to eat. Killing a few was obviously not aimed at the dragon resisting Mountain Pass. He did not want to throw away his life. Since it was not aimed at the dragon-resisting mountain pass, it was naturally aimed at the demons themselves. The bear demons next to him listened to Sahaba's words, and a green light appeared in his eyes. How about Mad Demon? Mad Demon's meat is very chewy. If we get 2 Mad Demons, it will be enough for us to eat. If this goes on, even if we don't freeze to death, we will starve to death. I don't want to become food for other races. Although the demons would eat corpses, there was one thing they would still pay attention to. That is, no race would eat the corpses of their own warriors. This was their final bottom line. The eyes of the several bear demons lit up. The strength of the Mad Demons was naturally far from being comparable to them, and there was no comparison between races. The bear Veilfar was here, and the Mad Demons did not have a demon god. Therefore, even if they were discovered, the bear demons of the Emperor's Legion would not suffer any loss. Demons lived in a world where the strong preyed on the weak. Outside the tent, the biting cold wind whistled, causing the tent to sway slightly. Although the tent was thick, it was only used to resist the cold wind. To truly resist the cold, they still had to rely on their own body temperature and thick fur. An ominous glint flashed in Sahaba's eyes. Let's go. We can't starve to death. We're noble bear demons. What's the big deal about eating 2 Mad Demons? Isn't it only right to use their lowly lives to extend our noble lives? Hearing his words, the 4 bear demons, whose eyes had turned green with hunger, could no longer hold it in. They quietly crawled out of the tent. As soon as they came out of the tent, the 4 bear demons could not help but shiver. The cold wind cut their fur like knives. Although it could not directly hurt them, it instantly swept away the temperature on the surface of their fur, and the biting chill quickly penetrated into their thick skin. Let's go. Sahaba made up his mind and walked in the direction of the Mad Demon's tent with his 3 companions. Because they belonged to the Emperor's Legion, the tent was stationed at the outermost area. The bear demon had thick skin and was the most resistant to the cold. Therefore, if they wanted to find trouble with the Mad Demons, they had to enter the inside of the tent. At this time, suddenly, Sahaba seemed to feel something. Do you smell it? There seems to be some special smell. Sahaba stopped and looked back in doubt. Under the biting cold wind, the outside of the tent was dark and nothing could be seen. They could only vaguely see the bright lights of the dragon resisting pass in the distance. But because the distance was too far, the light of the dragon resisting pass obviously could not reach them. Another bear demon said, Sahaba, you must be very hungry. Do you smell barbecue? Hey, I really want to eat some barbecue. As soon as this was said, several bear demons, including Sahaba, swallowed their saliva at the same time. Yes, if only there was delicious barbecue, that would be great. Just when Sahaba thought that his feeling was wrong, and that it was just because of excessive hunger, suddenly a silent figure touched behind them. This figure was completely covered in a big black cloak, almost integrated with the night. Moreover, there was an obvious distorted light around his body, completely concealing his own breath. The golden light shone almost instantly, and Sahaba and the other 4 bear demons felt a cold warmth almost at the same time. The next moment, they didn't know anything. The 4 huge corpses slowly fell to the ground. On each of the 4 heads, there was a bloody hole, a blow through the brain. This was an attack that even screams made them unable to make a sound. And on the body of the bear demons, the hardest part is the head. What kind of strength does it take to do this? There was no need to worry about the spread of the smell of blood. In such a cold situation, the 4 bear demons didn't even have blood spreading out of their bodies, and the corpses were directly frozen. The black figure waved his hand gently, and black figures, also covered in cloaks, quietly crept up and lined up horizontally under the command of the man in black. The black figure slowly took off the cloak on his head, revealing an old face. Wasn't it He-Jun, the deputy temple master of the Knights Templars? At this time, hidden under his black cloak was a shining orange armor, but he didn't wear a helmet. There were a total of 50 people who came with him, and each of them had the fluctuation of a distorted halo. This distorted halo was somewhat similar to Long Houchen's spirit shield. It was a special equipment to hide one's breath and figure. It belonged to the spirit attribute. Among the 6 major temple, the Knights Templars was second only to the Magic Temple in terms of wealth, so they had a lot of this special spiritual equipment. At this time, these powerhouses of the Knights Templars each wore a necklace called Spirit Barrier around their neck. Chapter 179. The Spiritual Barrier Necklace could produce a strange spiritual magnetic field that could distort all spiritual detection. It also had a miraculous shielding effect against area of effect spiritual detection. With the Spiritual Barrier Necklace, the knight could hide their aura to a large extent. Coupled with their high cultivation, even a demon god-level powerhouse would have to concentrate and probe in a fixed direction to discover them. He-Jun clapped his right hand lightly, and the 4 bear demons' corpses were quickly stored into his storage spiritual weapon. If possible, they would never leave food for the demons. Looking at the sky again, He-Jun raised his right hand in the air and made a few hand gestures. The knight who came with him immediately reacted and dispersed silently. They hid in the dark night. It was as if the cold wind had no effect on them at all. A faint chill flashed across He-Jun's eyes. With a flick of his wrist, a fist-sized, dark, golden metal ball appeared in each of his hands. Looking at the metal ball, his eyes instantly revealed a fanatical look. He lifted his head to look at the 8 gigantic demon god pillars in the center of the military camp. He also hid in the darkness, in the main tent of the demon's army. At this moment, Samina, the undead demon god, had yet to rest. He had summoned the other demon gods. 7 of the 8 demon gods were present. Only the berserk demon god Anan wasn't present. In fact, Anan had disappeared since the start of the Holy War. He only left his demon god pillars here according to the demon emperor's request. With regards to Ananda, even with the status of the devil god of death, Saminaga, he could do nothing about it. Anan's individual strength was enough to compete with the top 5 demon gods. At least, he wasn't any weaker than Samakina or Marbus. However, he didn't have his own race and only pursued strength. Who could do anything to a lone demon god like him? He only obeyed the demon emperor's orders. As for the other demon gods, they were at most sparring partners in his eyes. There was a reason why Anan was called the berserk demon god. As long as he fought, he didn't care if his opponent was a human or a demon. He would definitely fight to the death and wouldn't stop until there was a clear winner. Therefore, even Samakina and the rest, who were also demon gods, wouldn't be willing to spar with him. Even the demon gods thought that Anan was a madman. It was better that this lunatic was not in the military camp. In Ananda's original words, there was no goal for him in the Dragon Defense Pass. Samakina sat in the commander's seat. Below him was the Bear Veil Far. The other 5 demon gods were ranked much lower than them. Naturally, they had to sit further down and watch Samakina. The death demon god wasn't in a good mood. The gray aura on his body was faintly discernible. He squinted his eyes as if he was thinking about something. He hadn't said a word for a long time. 4th brother, we still have to continue the war tomorrow. This time, should we increase our strength? Otherwise, my brothers will cause trouble. They haven't eaten their fill for a few days. If this continues, I'm afraid it won't do. The one who spoke was Veilfur. He was in charge of the bear demon. In terms of strength, he was one of the best among the demon gods. Naturally, he was on equal footing with Samakina. Samakina nodded and said, I didn't expect such an accident to happen today. At that time, the morale of the humans was already at its peak. Continuing the war was very disadvantageous for us. Therefore, we could only retreat. These humans are really despicable. They actually stole the corpses of our people. Tomorrow's holy war is inevitable. It's time to teach the humans a lesson. Veilfur snorted coldly. I really don't understand why His Majesty wants us to maintain the war of attrition. If he had sent the 3 armies of the God Emperor, we might have broken through long ago. Would we still be in this state where we can't even eat? The humans must have a large amount of food reserves. Samakina's eyes revealed a hint of sternness. He glanced coldly at Valefor and said, "If you have the guts, say that directly to His Majesty." Valefor was instantly speechless. He looked at the 5 demon gods below him with a fierce gaze. "Did I say anything just now?" What did the 5 demon gods dare to say? They immediately shook their heads quickly to express their support for Valefor. Samakina said in a deep voice, "Enough. We need to discuss tomorrow's operation. As the war continues, our losses will increase. If this continues, we might become the final loser one day. His Majesty's order is for us to continue to deplete the human strength. For our own sake, we have to show them some power in tomorrow's battle. It's also time for our people to improve their meals. It's not a solution to always eat our own people. This time, even if the Knights Templars don't die, they must at least lose a layer of skin." Valefor was overjoyed. "Fourth brother, are you going to mobilize the Emperor's Legion?" Samakina nodded and said, "Mobilize 2 Emperor's Legion to assist in the battle. We can't mobilize all of them. Last time, the God Emperor's 2nd Legion was inexplicably greatly reduced in number. His Majesty was furious, and even I was punished. The Emperor's Legion is the foundation of U.S. demons. We need to reduce our losses as much as possible." The bear Valefor said, "I'll go tomorrow too. I want to meet that Long Tianin. Let's see if his throne of God of order and law can fight me to a draw. The other knight of the seal is in your hands." Samakina shook his head and said, "No, we still can't make a move. Once we join the battlefield, then it will definitely be out of control. It will evolve into the final battle, which His Majesty will not allow. Moreover, don't forget that almost all the main forces of our 2 races are gathered here. Can you afford to lose them?" Valefor frowned slightly and said, "In any case, we'll listen to you. We'll do whatever you say." Samakina glanced at him and sneered in his heart. "Valefor, do you think I don't know you? You seem very reckless on the surface, but in your heart, you are more insidious than anyone else." The bear demons ranked 6th in the God of Demons and did not enter the 5 pillars of demons. How could he not covet it? He was not that Anan who only pursued personal strength improvement. Among the 5 pillars of demon gods, the demon emperor's position was unshakable. They were also well aware of the terrifying strength of the moon demon Agars. As for the star demon, there was no need to mention him. The demon's prophet was the most important helper of the demon emperor. Whoever dared to target him must face the wrath of both the demon emperor and the moon demon Agars. Moreover, the star demon's own strength was very terrifying. Who dared to say that they could withstand the great prophecy spell? Among the demons, there had long been rumors that the star demon was the only existence that could threaten the demon emperor. In addition to these 3 unshakable, then if the bear Valefor wanted to rise to the top, there were only 2 targets, the undead demon god Samakina or the hell demon god Marbas. On the surface, Valefor seemed to listen to Samakina, but Samakina knew very well that this guy could stab him in the back at any time. He did not participate in the commander of the army, but he was very aware of the strength of the bear demon. He was waiting for Samakina to make a mistake. Therefore, Samakina was very wary of Valefor. The ranking of the 72 demon god pillars of demons was not fixed. As long as one was strong enough, anyone could challenge them. Of course, this kind of challenge was under the premise that the demon god pillars were not used. The higher the ranking of the demon god, the more stable their position was, and the fewer challenges they encountered. At least, the ranking of the top 10 demon gods had not changed for hundreds of years. Just as Samakina looked at Valefor and secretly cursed in his heart. Suddenly, the 7 demon gods present were shocked at the same time and looked in one direction. Enemy attack? Valefor's eyes revealed a look of shock, because just at this moment they clearly felt a strong and huge light element erupt at the edge of the demon camp. The 7 demon gods quickly rushed out of the commander's tent and looked in the direction of the light element. They saw that in the distance, dozens of strong golden lights soared into the sky, illuminating the dark night sky. Then, a huge ball of light fell toward the demon camp. Each of these golden light balls was about 1 meter in diameter, and they fell in the same direction. After dozens of light balls flew out, dozens of golden figures immediately soared and shot back in the direction of the dragon resisting Mountain Pass. Not good. Samakina shouted, and his figure rushed out like lightning. With his tyrannical cultivation, it only took a moment for him to rush to the scene of the accident. However, when they came out, those light balls had already fallen in one position. Even if Samakina's reaction was fast, he had to go through the process of discovering the light element, finding it, and judging it. And this short period of time was enough for the knight to sneak attack on the demon camp. Boom, 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 boom. A series of terrifying booms accompanied by intense golden flames soared. Because those balls of light were falling in the same direction, the booms sounded almost at the same time. The terrible golden light instantly blew away dozens of tents in the surroundings. Not only that, but it could also be clearly seen that the golden light balls were rapidly superimposed, and every time they superimposed, the terrible roar would be amplified. The range of the golden light did not expand, but as the sound became louder, the color of the golden light began to change. From the initial bright gold, it gradually turned white gold, then red gold, and finally into a deep dark gold. During the process of the golden light changing color, Samakina had already arrived at the core of the explosion. However, at this time he could not do anything. To be precise, he did not dare to do anything. Samakina did not know what those light balls were, but he knew that the power of these light balls was not great, but when superimposed, they burst out with power similar to a light forbidden spell. Any forbidden spell of any attribute was irreversible after it finished erupting. The most Samakina could do was resist its attack, and if he wanted to completely resist this forbidden spell with his own strength, then he must burst out with a stronger forbidden spell. However, even with Samakina's strength, it would take time to complete a forbidden spell. Moreover, this was the military camp of the demons. If he added a forbidden spell, it would only cause more losses. The power of the demon gods was undoubtedly displayed at this moment. Samakina let out a furious howl, and the other 6 demon gods followed immediately. Faced with this terrifying light forbidden spell attack after superimposing, the 7 demon gods quickly occupied 7 different positions, and their bodies erupted with extremely intense light rays at the same time. At the core of the military camp, the 7 demon god pillars shone brightly at the same time, and 7 huge pillars of light shot toward the 7 demon gods. Each of them made a pushing motion with their hands. It could be seen that the light emitted by the necromancer demon god Samakina and the demon god pillars were gray in color, while the bear Veilfar's body emitted yellow light. This did not mean that they were not of the darkness attribute. It was precisely because of the difference in color that they were more powerful. Different colors represented different directions of strength. Only after one's cultivation broke through to the 9th level would one's spiritual power emit a color that was compatible with one's nature and ability, surpassing the limits of attributes. The spiritual power light emitted by the 7 demon gods were all different, which meant that they were all above the 9th level. Coupled with the enhancement of the demon god pillars, one could imagine how terrifying their combined strength was. The 7 different colors of light erupted at the same time, producing an extremely powerful or even terrifying force. The 7 rays of light shone at the same time, forcibly suppressing the golden light forbidden spell that had already erupted within a certain range, preventing it from spreading. Since they could no longer stop the forbidden spell, they had to suppress its destructive power within a certain range. The damage of light attribute forbidden spells to the demons was too great. Within a diameter of about 200 meters that the golden light had covered, the densely packed tents of the demons turned into ashes one by one. The powerhouses of the Emperor's Legion inside the demons desperately resisted while screaming. However, they still turned into ashes one by one. Even the bear demon, who had a strong defense, could not escape the same fate. This was the result of the forbidden spell not spreading. If it had spread to a diameter of 1,000 meters, the destructive power would have been too terrifying. The expressions of the 7 demon gods were extremely ugly. The 7 of them resisted the light forbidden spell together, and the impact they received was still bearable. After all, they had their demon god pillars here, and they only needed to consume a certain amount of spiritual power. However, seeing a large number of elite Emperor's Legion soldiers perishing under the forbidden spell, and not even dying on the battlefield, one could imagine their anger. It seemed that they could only do this much, and could only watch as everything happened. They could not even chase after the knight who had already escaped. At this moment, in another direction of the demon camp, where the Emperor's Legion was stationed, dazzling golden light balls suddenly appeared and attacked the same point. This time the expressions of the 7 demon gods really changed. Even the undead demon god Samakina's face had turned livid. This was the first time since the start of the Holy War that the Knight of the Dragon Resisting Pass had attacked the demon camp. They did not expect it to be so decisive, although they still didn't know what method the humans used to achieve this kind of attack that was as powerful as a forbidden spell. The power of this ambush could be said to be unleashed to the greatest extent in the middle of the night when the demons were all curled up in their tents out of fear of the cold. On the side of the 7 demon gods, the power of the light forbidden spell had just erupted to the greatest extent. Just when they needed to go all out to restrict it, the other side launched an attack. This was obviously planned long ago. The Holy War had been going on for more than a year. Just as the demons had a very deep understanding of the defense and strength of the Knights Templars, humans also had a very good understanding of the demon army. There was no doubt that the demon army had an advantage, but some of their disadvantages and problems had also been clearly seen by the powerhouses of the Knights Templars, not to mention others. Just the dense formation of the demon camp itself was a big problem. If they could use fire to a certain extent, it was not impossible to burn down the camp. Of course, with the strength of the powerhouses of the demons, if they only used fire, then they could at most destroy a part of the camp. It was obviously not enough to hurt the Emperor's Legion on the periphery. Therefore, the Knights Templars had never launched a surprise attack. For a surprise attack, only the first time would have the best effect. It took time to paralyze the enemy, and the attack needed the most powerful blow. If they acted rashly, they would only alert the enemy. The Knights Templars had been holding back until now, and their counterattack finally broke out. There were also more than 50 figures. After throwing out those dazzling balls of light, they didn't linger and immediately turned around to leave. They quickly flew away. Just like that, the terrifying superimposed forbidden spell exploded in another direction of the demon race's camp. A strong golden light erupted in the Emperor's Legion camp, forming a huge golden mushroom cloud. The terrifying golden color spread in all directions at an alarming speed. Although the demon army had already felt a large number of powerhouses wake up from their sleep when the first forbidden spell was released. However, everything happened too quickly. Even the 7th and 8th grade demons could not react as fast as the 7 demon gods who were in a meeting. Under the pressure of hunger and cold, they had already fallen asleep. When they felt the sudden appearance of a huge light element aura, most of them were just woken up from their sleep. They did not even have the time to rush out of the camp before the second wave of attack appeared. In the next moment, the powerhouses of the demons within the range of the light element forbidden spell were quietly devoured. They were completely obliterated by the light element fire. The light element fire was also fire, and it could also spread. This second forbidden spell was not restricted by the demon gods, and it spread wildly to the periphery. Even if its power was not enough to kill the demons after it had spread to a certain extent, it could still set the tents on fire. The entire demon camp had become chaotic because of this surprise attack. At this moment, the third wave of attack from the Temple League Knight appeared. "Do it!" Long Houchen shouted. In each of his hands, he held a dark, golden metal ball. Dense spiritual power was instantly injected into the metal ball, and he threw it out after locking onto the position he had locked onto. As the light element spiritual power was injected into the metal ball, it suddenly blossomed with a huge golden light with a diameter of 1 meter. Behind him, 50 knights, shrouded in black, cloaks attacked at the same time, and a large number of golden light balls flew out. Their third wave of attack also appeared in the Emperor Legion, but the location of the attack was closer to the interior of the demon camp. After a series of golden light balls were thrown out, Long Houchen immediately gestured for retreat. "Boss, why don't we take advantage of the chaos of the demons and kill them?" Han Yu's voice sounded in Long Houchen's ears. Long Houchen shook his head decisively. "The forbidden spell's duration won't be too long. Our goal is only to launch a sneak attack. Retreat immediately. Otherwise, when the 7 demon gods react, we won't be able to leave even if we want to." Although he was anxious to complete the mission of 10 million merit points, it was equally important to protect his own safety. It could be said that his life no longer belonged to him alone, but to the entire alliance. Therefore, he didn't have the slightest desire to fight, and immediately led the 50 knight to retreat towards the direction of the dragon-resisting pass. This sneak attack was planned during the military meeting. The goal was simple and direct. It was completely aimed at the demons and the Emperor Legion. Although the 3 demon Emperor Legions had never been involved in the battlefield, there was no doubt that they were a threat to the dragon-resisting pass. After more than a year of investigation, the Knights Templars had already figured out the location of their encampment, and even knew the location of the infernal demons that were used for magic attacks. For example, the infernal demons that were attached to the back of the demons during the attack during the day actually belonged to the Emperor Legion. As a magic soldier, they were the biggest threat to the dragon-resisting pass. Therefore, the main goal of today's sneak attack was to target the Emperor Legion and the infernal demons. The metal ball that appeared in the hands of He-Jun Long Houchen, and every knight that came to attack was a secret weapon of the Knights Templars, and it was the first time it appeared on the battlefield. This weapon was called the light bomb. It was a powerful weapon that purely used light elements to produce explosive damage. It was also a good thing that the Knights Templars kept hidden away. When they first developed this thing, it was developed for magic cannons. There was no doubt about the power of magic cannons, but the energy consumption was also extremely high. A 5th or 6th grade magic crystal would often be emptied after just one shot. Even a 9th grade magic crystal wouldn't last for too long. Therefore, the Alliance thought of developing practical artillery shells, using some metals with strong elemental affinity and some low-grade magic crystals to produce it. If it was successful, it would definitely greatly enhance the effectiveness of magic cannons in actual combat. After many years of research, all kinds of problems kept appearing, but they still couldn't find a solution. During the research of the Knights Templars, they created something like the light bomb. The light bomb couldn't be fired by magic cannons at all, because it would immediately produce a powerful explosive force after being stimulated. It would explode before it even left the chamber, or it would explode right after it left the chamber. It wouldn't pose a threat to the enemy at all, and would instead become a suicide weapon. However, in an experiment, the researchers of the Knights Templars suddenly realized that the light bomb they developed also had a benefit, and that was the ability to stack. When the power of the light bomb of the same quality exploded, more of them would produce a stacking effect, and the effect would continue to increase, increasing exponentially. This discovery immediately piqued their interest, and they picked up the light bomb that they were about to give up on. After continuous research and experiments, they finally realized that when the power of the light bomb was limited to the level of a 4th grade light spell, the stacking effect would be the best, and it could be stacked continuously without any limit. Unfortunately, it still couldn't be fired by magic cannons. It could only be thrown by human hands, and it had to be someone with the light element to ignite it with the light element, throw it out, and then explode with a stacking explosive force. However, after this thing was developed, it was quickly criticized because on the battlefield, it was too difficult to stack it. A light bomb was only a 4th grade spell. Once it was released, the enemy would most likely resist it immediately. So how could it be stacked? It could be said that in a head-on clash on the battlefield, it was almost impossible for the light bomb to continuously stack and produce the power of a forbidden spell. Moreover, although the light bomb itself could only produce the power of a 4th grade spell, the production cost was extremely high. Not only did it require master-level craftsmanship, but it also required the fusion of many kinds of precious metal powder, including mithril and light element magical crystals. The failure rate was also very high. Hence, although the research was successful, the number of light bombs produced in the end was very small. Precious metals were easy to obtain, but light element magical crystals were too difficult. They couldn't let the Knight Templars go to the Knights' holy mountain to hunt for them, right? Hence, in the treasury of the Knights Templars, there were only a few hundred light bombs, and after they were developed, they had never really used them. However, since they had expended so much effort to create this thing, the Knight Temple had naturally considered the circumstances under which they could display their greatest might. That was to launch a sneak attack against the enemy. Only in this way could they display the superimposed effect of the light bomb. In today's ambush, it was also the first time that the light bomb appeared on the stage of history. For this ambush, the military of the Knights Templars had carried out an extremely detailed plan. Only the first ambush would have the best effect. Hence, Long Tianin finally decided to take out all the trump cards. Attacking from 3 directions was also part of the plan. Moreover, it was a rhythmic, 3-way attack so that the 7 demon gods would not be separated. This was to ensure that all the members of the ambush could retreat unscathed. After all, those who participated in this ambush were all Mithril Foundationite. Apart from Hanyu, the others were not Mithril Foundationites. Only leaders like Long Haochen and He-Jun were stronger. This kind of strength was also something that the dragon-resisting fortress could not afford to lose. The first wave of attack was undoubtedly the most dangerous because they were likely to face the pursuit of the demon gods. Hence, He-Jun, the Holy Knight, personally led the first wave, while Long Haochen and the others were placed at the last wave to further ensure their safety. Under such circumstances, how could Long Haochen not understand his grandfather's painstaking efforts? Although he had not truly acknowledged his grandfather, this was a battlefield, and as a soldier he had to obey orders. More than 50 figures shot out like lightning, each of them spreading their spiritual wings and flying at high speed. Long Haochen deliberately stayed at the back, summoning the Star King, and at the same time paying close attention to the movements behind him. The entire ambush plan was almost perfect. Apart from the power of the first forbidden spell being limited by the 7 demon gods, the power of the other 2 forbidden spells could be said to be fully unleashed. Even if it was not enough to destroy the Emperor Legion, it would at least wipe out the infernal demons in the Emperor Legion. This was the terror of forbidden spells. In the face of this kind of ambush, the average infernal demon with the strength of grade 6 and above did not have much ability to resist. Even the demonic bear, with its strong defense, would die in such a terrifying attack, let alone them who had fragile bodies. At this moment, the 7 demon gods' anger had reached its peak. The power of the forbidden spell in front of them had just begun to weaken, but the other 2 forbidden spells had already erupted. Even though the other grade 9 powerhouses in the demon camp had stepped forward in an attempt to weaken the power of the forbidden spells, they did not have the protection of the demon god pillars, after all, so they did not dare to take it head-on. Hence, 2 huge golden mushroom clouds could be seen exploding in the demon camp. The necromancer demon god, Samikina, gnashed his teeth, so hard that they almost broke. Since the start of this holy war, although the demons had always suffered great losses, this was the first time they had suffered such a blow. Those were the 3 great Emperor Legion that belonged directly to the demon emperor. The heavy blow the God Emperor Legion suffered last time had incurred the wrath of the demon emperor. The legion commander of the 2nd Legion, who was also a demon king under Samakina, was almost killed by the demon emperor. Even now he was still recuperating. This time, the 3 great Emperor Legion had suffered a heavy blow. Even with his identity, the demon emperor would not let him off easily. At this moment, Samakina suddenly noticed the last batch of human knight retreating. He immediately saw the Star King under Long Houchen. That was the king of the Starlight Unicorns. Even in the eyes of a demon god of Samakina's level, it was a rather powerful, light-type magical beast. Moreover, during the day he had just seen the radiance of the divine weapon released by the master of the Star King. How could he forget it now? Seeing Long Houchen, Samakina's heart stirred. He secretly thought that if he wanted to make up for the loss of the 3 great legions and bring the demon emperor's wrath, he could only rely on this divine weapon. To be able to hand over a light attribute divine artifact, although the demon gods couldn't use it, it should be enough to quell the demon god emperor's anger. Therefore, after thinking about it, he immediately took action. The huge gray wings flapped quietly. In the next moment, his body was like a gray meteor chasing after Long Houchen. After all, Long Houchen was a human and not a god. Naturally, he could not guess what the undead demon god Samakina was thinking. How could he have expected that because he did not want to use his spiritual wings to expose his identity, he would attract the undead demon god because of his relationship with the Star King? Samakina's sudden departure shocked the other 6 demon gods. This was because the forbidden spell below was not over yet. As soon as he left, the power of the forbidden spell immediately expanded, engulfing dozens of Emperor's Legion demons. However, the Bear Veilfar was the only one who truly understood his intentions. This was because he had also noticed Long Houchen and was prepared to chase after him. However, Samakina beat him to it. Under such circumstances, Veilfar could not attack anymore. Otherwise, it would be considered Samakina's provocation. Although he had been thinking about entering the top 5 demon gods, he was not willing to shed all pretense of cordiality with Samakina. He was very clear about the strength of the demons. Long Houchen was retreating with his companions. The other 2 teams had already returned to the dragon-resisting pass. At this moment, he suddenly felt an indescribably terrifying pressure. This was the first time he had felt such a feeling. Even his father and grandfather had never felt such a thing. This pressure was not in terms of aura, but in the air. He only felt that the air around his body seemed to have become viscous. It was pressing down on his body from all directions. As a result, Star King's speed suddenly slowed down. That kind of omnipresent oppression seemed to want to forcibly crush him. Not good. Without looking back, Long Houchen could already guess what was going on. To be able to bring such pressure to the point where he could not even think of resisting, it could only be a demon god. Hanyu, you guys leave quickly. With a loud shout, Long Houchen immediately ordered Star King to turn around. At the same time, he released his ripple of light. At the same time, an orange-red light bloomed from his left arm, quickly protecting his whole body. The Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield was indeed an existence that had the potential to become a supreme artifact. After releasing it, Long Houchen immediately felt his body lighten. The pressure on his body was greatly reduced. However, at this moment, he had already seen the demon god of death chasing after him like a meteor. He could not help but gasp in his heart. This was the demon god of death, ranked 4th among the demons. Even his grandfather admitted that he was not a match for him. A terrifying expert with an internal spiritual energy of more than 400,000. Above the 9th rank, each level was a step higher. The difference was not as simple as it seemed. Above the 9th rank, each level was equivalent to the addition of a new 9th rank, and this increase had to be calculated by geometric multiples. With Long Tian's spiritual energy of more than 200,000 and the throne of God, it was only possible for him to fight against the demon god of death, Samakina. How could he resist? However, at this moment, Long Haochen could not retreat. No matter what, Star King's speed could not be compared to Samakina's. If Long Haochen was caught up by force, perhaps there would be no chance for him to resist at all. Moreover, he was the commander of this temporary army and the new acting Holy Knight leader. At this critical moment of life and death, how could he leave his comrades back to the enemy? Therefore, he had to stay and do his best to resist Samakina. Perhaps he really had to use that power again, under the situation of not exposing his identity. Apart from that, what else could help him escape from this battle that he was bound to lose? Chapter 180. Long Haochen had already made up his mind. In order to survive, he was afraid that he would have to use the Tower of Eternity again. Only by entering the Tower of Eternity would he have a chance to escape. But now was not the time. He had to think of a way to stop Samakina as much as possible for a period of time. At the very least, he had to let his companions leave successfully. Captain, Han, you also saw Samakina, but he did not feel the pressure in the air. The necromancer demonic god's only target was Long Haochen. He did not put them in his eyes at all. Let's go, I have a way to escape. Long Haochen anxiously gave Hanyu a look. He knew that with Samakina's strength, the aftermath of one attack could very likely destroy a knight of Hanyu's level. Han Yu clenched his teeth. With his tacit understanding with Long Haochen, he naturally understood what the captain was hinting at. If he stayed, he would only become a burden to Long Haochen. He immediately turned around and quickly flew towards the dragon-resisting pass with the other Mithril Foundation Knight. Unlike him, the Mithril Foundation Knight did not have any worries. In their eyes, Long Haochen was a powerful holy knight with a divine weapon. The strong would cover the weak. This had always been the tradition of the knight. What they needed to do now was to hurry back as soon as possible and not become a burden to Long Haochen. Feeling that his companions were quickly leaving, Long Haochen's heart quickly calmed down. He looked at the figure that was constantly enlarging in his eyes. He took a deep breath, put away the ripple of light in his hand, and slowly raised his left hand that was releasing an orange light. Long Haochen was very clear that the ripple of light, a glory-grade equipment, would not be able to play any role against the necromancer, demonic god Samakina. They couldn't even withstand his full strength. Therefore, he could only put it away. At this moment, Long Haochen had no intention of taking out his two divine swords. Not only was it because they were still being nurtured and not suitable to be broken, but more importantly, if these two divine swords were to appear on the battlefield, then his identity would definitely be exposed. If that happened, then it would truly be a devastating blow to the Night Temple. The Demon Emperor would never let him off. Therefore, Long Haochen had a clear plan. He would use the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield to block Samakina and buy enough time for his companions to escape. At the same time, he also believed that on the side of the dragon-resisting mountain pass, his grandfather, who was watching over the demon camp, must have already discovered the situation here. Unless absolutely necessary, he would never use the Tower of Eternity's teleportation ability. The necromancer, demonic god Samakina, watched as Long Haochen raised his left hand. His forward flying speed also slowed down. During the day, he saw the power of the shield with his own eyes. He didn't know how this sun-moon divine snail shield was transformed into a divine weapon. Facing a divine weapon, even if he was sure that he had the absolute advantage, he wouldn't be careless. The sky behind Samakina turned completely gray in an instant. A huge and ferocious demon's head flashed in the gray. The huge gray airflow almost instantly swallowed Long Haochen. The monstrous aura of death was like the wailing of countless resentful spirits. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact it happened in a few blinks of an eye. From the time Long Haochen and the others retreated to the time when Samakina caught up, only a few seconds had passed. At this time, Long Houchin had completely gotten rid of the distracting thoughts in his mind. If it was an 8th step Saint Knight, facing a powerhouse of the necromancer, demonic gods level, perhaps his heart would have already panicked, not to mention exerting his full strength. But Long Houchin wouldn't. He was the son of light, a god's chosen one. After more than a year of painstaking seclusion, his heart had long been cleared of all distracting thoughts. Thus, he'd practically instantly entered into the enlightened sword heart that belonged to him. Samakina's terrifying necromancer domain surrounded him. But also at this time, the orange light on Long Houchin's left hand had already fully shone. An incomparably dense sword intent unexpectedly erupted from this shield. The huge orange light will forcibly supported a world that belonged to Long Houchin in the necromancer domain. Samakina's pupils suddenly contracted, and his flying speed decreased a little again. He had felt this sword intent before. On that battlefield, a sword intent similar to this had even injured the Demon Emperor. Although Samakina didn't live as long as the Demon Emperor, he was already more than 300 years old. He had personally witnessed the scene when the temple master of the warrior temple, the radiant sword god Yi Wushang, challenged the Demon Emperor. That battle ended very quickly. How could Yi Wushang's strength compare to the Demon Emperor's? However, he relied on that powerful sword intent that staked everything on one throw to injure the Demon Emperor before he perished. At this time, Yi Wushang once again felt the sword intent from the knight in front of him, who was wearing the golden foundation armor. Compared to the sword intent of the radiant sword god Yi Wushang, the sword intent in front of him was not as strong, but its aura was more powerful. Yi Wushang's sword intent was full of unparalleled persistence and sharpness, but the sword intent of the knight on a golden pedestal in front of him was more penetrating and awe-inspiring. The sword intent was different, but its power was obviously not much inferior. Moreover, the sword that Yi Wushang used back then was a divine sword. That divine sword was also a divine weapon, but the weapon of the knight on a golden pedestal in front of him was even weirder. He actually used a shield that could exert the power of a divine weapon to release sword intent. Samakina had lived for more than 300 years, but this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. Therefore, he had no choice but to be cautious. In Samakina's view, since Long Houchin could wear the epic golden foundation armor and control a divine weapon, he must be a 9th-stage powerhouse at the same level as the divine knight. He was not the knight of the seal, but with a divine weapon, his strength should not be much worse than Long Tinin's. Therefore, his judgment of Long Houchin's strength had reached another level, especially when he saw that his powerful sword intent actually propped up a sky in his realm of death. He was even more certain of his judgment. Long Houchin did not think much at this time. At this time, there was only a sword in his heart. Yes, the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield was not a sword, but this did not affect Long Houchin from releasing his sword intent, even if he was empty-handed, because he had a sword in his heart. If his sword intent was described with spiritual power, then 1.5 years ago his sword intent was at most in the form of mist in his heart, and he could barely see a trace of the shape of a sword. But today, 1.5 years later, the sword intent in his heart had completely turned into a liquid state, and it had been shaped. Judging from the sword intent alone, the current Long Houchin could indeed be compared with Yi Wushang. The only difference was cultivation and a deeper understanding. After all, he was still too young, and there was still a huge gap between him and Yi Wushang, who had been practicing swordsmanship for hundreds of times. However, not everyone could have this sword intent. It was not so easy to suppress the dead spirit demon god. Samakina had already made his move. Being afraid of Long Houchin's sword intent did not mean that he had given up on the divine weapon in his hand. On the contrary, Samakina was determined to get it, and he was determined to kill Long Houchin. Killing a holy knight of Knights Templars who had comprehended the sword intent was also a great achievement. although the golden foundation armor could not be kept because of the special refining method of the Knights Templars. The spiritual core of a holy knight was a good thing. When there were more than 9 spiritual orifices, a panacea would be produced, also known as a spiritual core. Any powerhouse could continuously cultivate spiritual orifices, but there could only be one panacea. It existed in the first spiritual orifice. The effect of the panacea was far greater than the magic crystals condensed by the demons. After all, it was something that only powerhouses of the 9th rank could have. The demons had the ability to remove the attributes from the panacea and turn it into pure spiritual power. A panacea was equivalent to a life on the battlefield. This was true even for a powerhouse like the dead spirit demon god Samekina. The panacea could instantly replenish all the spiritual power to the user at a critical moment. It was an instant, and the replenishment was completely without any impact. Therefore, in the mouth of devil apothecaries, spirit pills were supreme-grade medicinal pills of the highest quality. The more powerful the stage 9 powerhouse, the better the effect of the spirit pill produced. Among humans, the spirit core of a rank 9 powerhouse was not allowed. Once a rank 9 powerhouse died, they would be buried in a special cemetery. Only the top leaders of the Temple League knew about this place. Of course, this was also the biggest secret of the Temple League. Even if Long Houchin wanted to know, he would have to wait until the day he became the Temple Master of the Knights Templars. The huge gray hand tore through the air and instantly grew to a diameter of over 10 meters, grabbing at Long Houchin. When the hand first appeared, it was still in the form of a gray stream of air. However, when it was about to close, it had already solidified. Long Houchin was not afraid in the slightest. His eyes were clear and cold. His left hand, which was raised high above his head, slowly lowered. The orange-red light suddenly intensified. One could clearly see an orange-red light wheel with a diameter of over 10 meters slowly descending. The incomparably dense sword intent just a moment ago had disappeared in an instant. Apart from the orange-red light, there was only the golden halo that spread from Star King's body to cover Long Houchin's entire body. Poof! The light wheel collided with the gray hand. Samekina's right hand made a clenching motion. Suddenly, a terrifying aura of darkness and death erupted around Long Houchin's body. The terrifying spirit force fluctuations could be clearly felt even in the belly of the dragon resisting pass. Although being valued by the necromancer demon god would reduce the frequency of Samekina's attacks, at the same time, it would also draw out the necromancer demon god's true strength. A powerful attack. A faint light flickered. Long Houchin's eyes revealed a hint of coldness. At this moment, in his perception, there was only death and darkness around him. However, in his heart, the liquid sword intent burst out at an unparalleled speed. Long Houchin only felt a ding sound in his heart. This feeling was very difficult to describe. It was as if something had broken, but it also seemed as if something had appeared. It was as if something had been broken and then rebuilt. A trace of enlightenment instantly came to his mind. However, at this moment, he clearly did not consider these possibilities. The light wheel that floated out contained all the power of his sword intent. Dragon resisting pass. An intense blue-golden light was shooting towards the demon camp at an unparalleled speed. At this moment, Long Tianin's heart was burning. He never thought that Samekina would attack Long Houchin. In all the previous discussions, there were also calculations about the demon gods directly attacking. However, according to the calculations, the most likely moment for the 7 great demon gods to attack was at the beginning. If they did not care about the eruption of the forbidden spell, it was possible that they would attack the first wave of Knight's attack, and Hijun, an expert, was among them. With his resistance, it would be enough for the Mithril Foundation Knight to retreat. Moreover, the possibility of the demon gods attacking was almost negligible during the military's discussion. That was the forbidden spell that fell on the Emperor's 3 major legions. Even if the demon gods dealt with the first one, they would have to try their best to resolve the power produced when the other two erupted to reduce their losses. The Emperor's Legion. That was something that even the demon emperor would feel distressed about. Who would have thought that the demon god of death, Samakina, would suddenly abandon the forbidden spell and attack Long Houchen alone? At this moment, Long Tianyin regretted so much that his intestines turned green. He now suddenly realized the crux of the matter. It was impossible for Long Houchen to be recognized. The mount had changed, the weapon had changed, and the strength had also changed dramatically. Unless Samakina had X-ray vision, it would be impossible for him to recognize Long Houchen. Then there was only one explanation for his sudden attack on Long Houchen. It was because of the artifact that Long Houchen had displayed during the day. Long Tianyi knew that he had overlooked the possibility of Long Houchen being exposed. If Long Houchen's spiritual wings were the same as the others, it would not have attracted Samakina's attention. He would have returned safely by now. However, he had 4 spiritual wings, which was too unique. He had no choice but to summon the king of starlight unicorns. Samakina must have determined from his mount that he was the powerful human knight who had killed the 2 demon lords during the day. That was why he attacked him. At this point, it was useless to regret. This was a situation where plans could not keep up with changes. No one would have thought that this would happen. The only thing he could do now was to rescue Long Houchen as much as possible. Among all the higher-ups of the Knights Templars in the Dragon resisting Mountain Pass, only Long Tianyi knew the true meaning of Long Houchen to the Knights Templars. Not to mention, Long Houchen was his grandson, his only grandson. Long Tianyin already had a strong sense of guilt towards Long Houchen. At this moment, seeing his grandson being attacked by Samakina, he had completely fallen into Samakina's domain. How could he not be anxious? The golden blue light left a dazzling golden blue trail of flames behind Long Tianyin's back. One could clearly see the throne of God of order and law disintegrating behind Long Tianyin's back. Rays of golden blue light continuously chased after Long Tianyin's body, transforming into pieces of armor that fused with his body. With every piece of golden blue armor that covered his body, Long Tianyin's aura grew stronger by a fraction. The sky behind him also grew brighter by a fraction. In a situation where he was going all out, Long Tianyin was no longer holding anything back. Even if he was trapped in the battlefield, he must rescue Long Houchen. This was the only thought in his mind at this moment. Long Tianyin's reaction was fast. However, he was still slower than Samakina, the necromancer demon god, who was closer to Long Houchen and took the initiative to attack. When Long Tianyin left the dragon-resisting pass, Samakina's death god's grasp had already grabbed hold of Long Houchen, who was riding on the Star King. Hum! A strange buzzing sound was heard. Then, an indescribable special feeling suddenly erupted from the death god's grasp. The originally incomparably powerful gray hand suddenly became stiff, and then a layer of orange halo suddenly spread out. Hiss! Like boiling oil being poured into snow, the giant gray hand formed by the death god's grasp shattered almost instantly. It turned into gray mist and scattered in all directions. A rich orange-red light broke through the mist with an incomparably resplendent halo. A strange scene appeared. In the originally silent night, a golden beam of light actually descended from the sky and landed on Long Houchen. It made him, who was riding on the Star King, look so holy. The sun-moon divine snail shield had already become about 2 feet in diameter. The powerful orange light became abnormally intense. It was as if it was refracting the golden light falling from the sky. The huge beam of light directly bombarded Samakina. Samakina was shocked. When his death god's grasp grabbed hold of Long Houchen, he was surprised to feel that this knight on a golden pedestal did not seem to be as powerful as he had imagined. However, very quickly he was shocked again. Within the orange-red halo, an incomparably powerful sword intent burst forth. The sword intent was like a sudden explosion of spiritual energy, but it was thousands of times more powerful. It actually tore apart his death god's grasp in an instant. What shocked Samakina even more was that it wasn't the powerful spiritual energy that tore the death god's grasp apart. It was the spiritual energy within the sword intent that tore the death god's grasp apart. In other words, it wasn't Long Houchin's cultivation that could resist the death god's grasp. It was the sudden burst of powerful sword intent that cut off Samakina's control over the death god's grasp and broke the attack. The refracted golden beam of light was filled with a vast aura of light between heaven and earth. When the golden beam of light shone on Samakina's overflowing gray light, one could vaguely hear a clear and passionate music. When the gray fog came into contact with the golden beam of light, it rapidly melted. It actually could not resist the impact of the golden beam of light. Long Houchin was currently within Samakina's territory. Within the territory, the owner of the territory was the one who controlled the attributes and elemental levels. However, he did not seem to be affected at all. This could only mean one thing, and that was that the purity of Long Houchin's light attribute surpassed the purity of Samakina's death and darkness attribute. As the fourth-ranked demon god among the demons, how could Samakina not be shocked? However, being shocked did not mean that he would not continue to attack. On the contrary, his battle intent became stronger because of Long Houchin's strong resistance. Faced with the golden beam of light, Samakina's eyes turned cold. He raised his right fist and slowly punched forward. His movements were very slow, but the other change was the refraction of light. This should have been a speed that belonged to two completely different worlds. However, when Samakina punched out, it happened to be the instant when the beam of light descended. The endless gray vortex collided with the golden beam of light. The gray fog surged, but it did not dissipate. The shrill howl almost instantly drowned out the pleasant music. 12 ferocious demon heads quietly appeared. The light intertwined and tore the beam of light into pieces. Long Houchin used the god's descent spell, which originated from the power of the goddess of light. It was used through the sun-moon divine snail shield. This was not the first time he tried it. Such an attack was naturally weaker than the aria of the goddess of light. However, in the case of a pure collision of spiritual power, it was more powerful. However, his opponent was too strong after all. Even the god's descent spell could not really be effective against the demon god of death. With a muffled groan, Long Houchin's body trembled violently. Even the Star King trembled at the same time. It seemed like a simple attack, but Long Houchin had used all his strength to resist the 9th rank attack of the death god's grasp. He also launched a counterattack. This was all he could do. The difference in strength was huge. No matter how powerful the sword intent was, without the support of enough spiritual power, it would not be able to unleash its full brilliance. Samakina did not use his full strength against Long Houchin. He could naturally see Long Tianyin rushing over. Moreover, although it was a simple exchange with his powerful strength, how could he not sense Long Houchin's true cultivation? The demon god of death understood that this was only an 8th rank knight who had obtained a god weapon. His cultivation was definitely not at the 9th rank. However, no matter what his cultivation was, it was enough as long as he could obtain the god weapon. He did not use his full strength because the sun-moon divine snail shield had not unleashed the power of the god weapon. He had to be careful. During the day, the colorful golden light had shocked him. Samakina had to find out how powerful the light was. The golden light shattered, and the gray vortex had already covered the sky and the earth as it surged up. It almost instantly enveloped Long Houchin's body, and even Star King was swallowed into the gray vortex. Samakina's secret technique. Against this technique, even Long Tianyin had to rely on the power of the god weapon to resist. Would Long Tianyin be able to save Long Houchin in time? The answer was no. This was because a majestic figure was blocking his path. It was the bear demon god Vaelfer. Although Vaelfer was jealous of Samanina's status, in the face of major issues as a demon god, he could still distinguish between right and wrong. After dealing with the first forbidden spell, he let the other 5 demon gods weaken the power of the other 2 forbidden spells to save the Emperor's legion. He then flew past Samakina and blocked Long Tianin's path. How could Vaelfer not know why Samakina was chasing after Long Houchen? He was also responsible for the Emperor's legion's heavy losses. The demon god Samakina would not be the only one to be punished. Therefore, he had to get his hands on this god weapon that could reduce the demon emperor's anger. He naturally could not let Long Tianin interfere with Samakina. "Scram!" Long Tianin shouted. At this moment, the sky behind him had turned completely blue and gold, forming a sharp contrast with Samakina's gray death domain. The magnificent blue and gold armor covered his entire body. Blue moonlight was the theme of this armor, the throne of God of order and law. There was only one weapon, a huge warhammer. Even with Long Tianin's cultivation, he still needed to use both hands to control it. Speaking of coincidence, the demonic bear god Vaelfer was also holding a sledgehammer in each of his hands. They were crystal yellow in color, as if they were carved from 2 huge yellow crystals. Boom! 1 hammer against 2. The 3 hammers of the Knight of the Seal of Control and Restriction, Long Tianin, and the bear Vaelfer collided violently in the air. Vaelfer did not release his domain. However, at the moment when the 3 hammers collided, a huge, crystal yellow bear, more than 100 meters tall, appeared behind him, roaring at the sky. The violent explosion caused the dragon resisting mountain pass and the demon camp to tremble. Amidst the explosion, Long Tianin, who was flying at high speed, was forcibly stopped. Moreover, he was forced back more than 100 meters. The bear demon's most tyrannical strength was its strength. Even if Long Tianin was wearing the god of order and law armor, in a pure competition of strength, he was still not Vaelfer's opponent. How could the 6th demon god of demons be so easy to deal with? Without sufficient strength, how could Vaelfer dare to covet the position of the 5 demon god pillars? Long Tianin was forced back, but he did not make a sound. He could now clearly see the gray mist surging in the distance, but he could not see the figures of Long Houchen and Samakina. He and Samakina had fought several times, so he was very familiar with Long Houchen's ability. He knew that even if Long Houchen did not hide his strength, he would not be able to withstand more than a few blows in front of Samakina. Not to mention, Long Houchen's Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield could not exert the power of a divine tool. Right now, Long Houchen could not control it at all. However, Long Tianin was indeed worthy of being the Knight of the Seal of Control and Restriction. The more dangerous the situation was, the calmer he became. The bluish-golden giant hammer in his hand was slowly raised into the air. One could see that the total length of the hammer was about 12 feet. The hammerhead was perfectly round and about 2 feet in diameter. On the huge hammerhead, there are countless moons of all kinds, including full moons, crescent moons, and crescent moons. Each of the moons shone with a dazzling bluish-golden luster. When he raised the giant hammer, Long Tianin chanted in a deep voice, "Heaven and earth, order and law, heed my command. Divine power of the moon, shine." Instantly, the bluish-golden light that filled the sky behind him fluctuated violently and actually condensed into the shape of a crescent moon. The moonlight converged, turning Mount Shumi into a mustard seed, condensing into a solid, pure and thick blue-gold light that shone on his giant hammer. Vaelfer's twin hammers forced Long Tianin back. In fact, he had also suffered quite a bit of shock. In particular, the huge amount of light elements that came from Long Tianin's divine tool giant hammer made him need time to dispel them. At this moment, when he saw the moonlight shining on Long Tianin's giant hammer, his expression immediately became solemn. The necromancer demon god Samakina had told him that this giant hammer of Long Tianin's was called the moon god. The power of the moon god was also of the light attribute. When Long Tianin attacked with all his strength, his domain would turn into the shape of a moon. At this time, Long Tianin was the most terrifying. The larger the size of the moon, the more terrifying Long Tianin's attack would be. If it reached the state of a full moon, even Long Tianin would have to avoid it head-on. Valefor spread his arms to his sides and puffed out his solid chest. He looked up at the sky and let out an angry roar. The giant yellow bear behind him suddenly became solid. Valefor's body also expanded in an instant, and a wild aura burst out. In terms of spiritual power cultivation, Valefor was only slightly inferior to Samakina. In terms of physical strength, among the demons, only Demon Emperor Fengxiu dared to say that he could beat him. No matter how strong Long Tianin was, Long Tianin would not retreat. Fighting head-on was the fighting style that the bear demons were best at. 10,000 bear power. Facing Long Tianin's bluish-gold moon god hammer, Valefor roared angrily. The pair of giant hammers made an upward movement and collided head-on again. Bang! This time, when the two sides collided again, the three giant hammers were directly stuck together. The shadow of the giant bear behind Valefor and the crescent moon behind Long Tianin all burst out incomparably bright light. The distorted fog of light formed a huge spiral-shaped tornado, almost illuminating the entire sky from the dragon-resisting mountain pass to the demon camp. Valefor's originally wild eyes gradually revealed a look of shock, because he clearly felt that his power was gradually being suppressed, and the space around his body was breaking at an alarming speed. These broken spaces were blocking the connection between him and his own domain, and everything around him seemed to be completely under the control of Long Tianin. The power of order and law lay in the control of domains. Although the Order and Law Throne of God was ranked last among the 6th Throne of God, in terms of the enhancement of domains, it was second only to the Eternal and Creator Throne of God. Long Tianin's domain could not only greatly enhance himself, but at the same time, it could also destroy the enemy's domain. And at the level of the 9th Order, the role of the domain was crucial. Boom! The demon bear god Valefor was sent flying backward along with his twin hammers. He flew into the distance like a huge yellow cannonball. The domain of bear demons behind him, which was used to enhance himself, was unexpectedly shattered, and the golden blue crescent moon behind Long Tianin also doubled in size. The golden blue light reflected by the moon god's hammer became incomparably bright. An abnormal flush flashed across Long Tianin's face. It was easier said than done to repel the bear demons. He had already overloaded the throne of God with the power of order and law. However, in order to save Long Houchin, he was willing to pay any price. He took another deep breath. Just as he was about to attack the undead domain created by Samakina, he saw a scene that shocked him to the extreme. Samakina's undead domain was surging violently, and there were thousands of golden lights bursting out from it. With the strength of Samakina's domain, it was completely insufficient to stop the terrifying power of the golden lights. The entire domain was not only stirred violently, but it was also shaking violently. Wherever the golden light passed, the gray of the undead domain was disappearing rapidly. The entire domain was like a giant beast that was struggling on its deathbed. How is this possible? This was the first thought that came to Long Tianin's mind. He was well aware of Long Houchin's strength, not to mention the fact that he could not use the ability of the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield. Even if he could, given the huge difference in strength between him and Samakina, it was impossible to break through Samakina's domain. When Long Tianin and the bear Valefor collided, he was only praying that Long Houchin could use the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield to resist for a while, so that he could buy time for his rescue. However, he never expected such a situation to occur. The golden light was clearly of the light attribute, and from the looks of it, it seemed like Long Houchin had the upper hand, and it was an absolute advantage. To a Type 9 powerhouse, the domain was like an extension of their life. Once the domain was broken, the blow to the Type 9 powerhouse would be unparalleled. Suffering such a blow would not only be a heavy blow, but also an injury to the foundation. But how did Long Houchen do it? In fact, even Long Houchen himself was shocked beyond words. When the cycle of death appeared and engulfed him and the Star King, Long Houchen immediately knew that this was not something he could defend against. Samakina was too strong, and with his 400,000 spiritual energy points, the power of his skill was close to that of a forbidden spell. Even though he did not accumulate power, his terrifying strength made it seem like the skill was formed by Lingang. Although Long Houchen had the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield to protect him, even if the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield could withstand the power, he would not be able to withstand it, and would be torn apart by the immense pressure. Hence, the moment the cycle of death descended, he immediately sent the Star King back to the Star King's space, and, at the same time, did not hesitate to activate the eternal melody on his chest. He could only escape with the help of the Tower of Eternity. There was no other way. However, with the Tower of Eternity, Long Houchen was very calm. As his strength increased, through the eternal melody, his connection with the Tower of Eternity became closer. With just a thought, he could activate the connection with the Tower of Eternity. Even if the cycle of death was powerful enough, it would not be able to stop the connection, and he would still be able to escape. This was also the reason why Long Houchen did not panic at all. However, just as Long Houchen activated the eternal melody and instantly connected with the Tower of Eternity, something strange happened. On his chest, the eternal melody suddenly blossomed with an unparalleled golden radiance and scorching heat. The intense heat almost incinerated Long Houchen's body. Even with his willpower, he could not help but let out a scream. Then he saw thousands of golden rays bursting out, and the eternal melody transmitted an indescribable feeling of ecstasy to him. Then the cycle of death that was originally enough to kill him surged violently, and the thousands of golden rays enveloped Long Houchen. No matter how shocked Long Tianyin and Long Houchen were, they could not compare to Samakina's current feelings. Chapter 181. Samakina's judgment of Long Houchen's strength was accurate, and he knew that he would definitely succeed. In the face of the samsara of death, even if Long Houchen unleashed the power of the god weapon, he would not be able to hold on for long. After all, the difference in strength was obvious. He was waiting for Long Houchen to be strangled by the melody of death, and a wisp of his soul would fuse into his necromancy domain. Then the god weapon would naturally fall into his hands. However, just as Samakina began to pay attention to the battle between Long Tianyin and Valefor, and was preparing to resist Long Tianyin's attack, something strange happened. Long Houchen, who was engulfed by the samsara of death, suddenly emitted thousands of golden rays from his chest. Even in Long Tianyin's eyes, these golden rays were pure and boundless light attribute, but not in his eyes. The golden rays had a strange quality, a quality that even Samakina was afraid of, although his necromancy domain originated from himself. As time passed, the reason why the necromancy domain's power kept increasing was because of the souls that died in his domain. The power of these souls was continuously engulfed by the necromancy domain and refined into vengeful spirits, which greatly increased the power of the necromancy domain. Therefore, among the demons, Samakina's necromancy domain was also unique. It was so powerful that even Moon Demon Agar's and Star Demon Vesak were in awe of it. His status as the fourth demon god was also established by the necromancy domain. Just now, Samakina had even used the most powerful necromancy domain, the 12 vengeful spirit kings, to instantly break Long Houchen's god's arrival. He could be said to have reached the peak of necromancy after cultivating it to this extent, and he was not afraid of ordinary light attribute energy at all. However, at this moment he really felt fear. This was because the thousands of golden rays emitted from Long Houchen's chest were crazily engulfing the power of his domain. That's right, it wasn't destroying or dissolving, but devouring. He could clearly sense that the vengeful spirits within his domain were being devoured by the golden light at an astonishing speed. The samsara of death was almost instantly broken when Long Houchin reappeared in his line of sight, apart from the tens of thousands of golden rays radiating from his chest. There was also a golden pagoda enveloping his body. From the golden pagoda, an incomparably powerful pressure burst forth. This level of pressure was something that Samakina had only felt from the Demon Emperor. A golden light that was 10 times more powerful than before burst forth from the golden pagoda. One could vaguely see platinum-colored vengeful spirits pouncing out of the golden pagoda, tearing at his necromancy domain frantically. At the same time, they were frantically devouring it. In the blink of an eye, it had already spread to the entire necromancy domain. What was this? Samakina panicked. In his panic, he naturally couldn't hold back at all. 12 gray, vengeful spirits that shone with a dark gold color shot out from his back. Each of them grew to a diameter of 100 meters and pounced toward the golden pagoda frantically. The necromancy demon god could sense that if he allowed the pagoda to continue devouring, his necromancy domain would probably be completely destroyed. This power was simply too terrifying. The pressure that the golden pagoda brought him was far greater than that of Long Houchin's sun-moon divine snail shield during the day. When the golden pagoda appeared, he even had a feeling that he couldn't resist it. It was a divine artifact. Furthermore, it wasn't an ordinary divine artifact. It was a divine artifact that completely suppressed him in terms of attributes. In fact, the necromancy demon god Samakina was really too unlucky. If it had been another demon god, even if it was a demon god whose ranking was much lower than his, he would have already forced Long Houchin to teleport back to the Tower of Eternity. Absolute power was something that Long Houchin couldn't resist. However, the key problem was that Samakina had made a move himself. He was the necromancy demon god, and he specialized in necromancy that was based on the dark attribute. It could be said that he was the strongest in necromancy on the entire continent. However, even though he was the strongest in necromancy now, it didn't mean that he was the strongest in necromancy in the history of the Holy Demon Continent. Although Samakina was powerful, he was nothing compared to the Holy Demon Continent's holy law of necromancy, Eternal Sleep Disaster Electrolux, who was once the son of light and cultivated necromancy with the light attribute and became a disaster for the entire human race. Back then, it was almost a gathering of the entire human race's strength to seal Electrolux and destroy his physical body, but the Tower of Eternity was still intact. The holy law of necromancy, Eternal Sleep Disaster Electrolux, fought against the entire human race almost by himself. His degree of terror was no less than that of the Demon Emperor, or even more destructive to humans than the Demon Emperor. The Eternal Sleep Disaster Electrolux cultivated necromancy, and the biggest difference between necromancy and necromancy was summoning. Necromancy was more inclined to summoning, while necromancy was more inclined to destruction and destruction. One was to transform the power of souls into individuals to assist oneself in battle, and the other was to directly absorb the power of these souls to strengthen oneself. Fundamentally speaking, between the two, there was no saying which was stronger and which was weaker. It all depended on one's cultivation. The necromancy demon god Samakina was indeed very strong, so strong that he was ranked 4th among the demons and the number 1 necromancer in the world. However, compared to Electrolux, he was not just a little bit weaker. The son of light, the eternal sleep disaster, Electrolux, with the physique of a god's blessed, even dared to blaspheme the goddess of light. How terrifying was his strength! With his intelligence and wisdom, his research on necromancy had almost reached the extreme, and he had included necromancy in it. He also left behind the existence of the Tower of Eternity, a supreme artifact that could travel through space and planes. It was not something that Samakina could contend with. If the necromancy demon god Electrolux was still alive, then in his eyes Samakina was just the soul of a strong person. He was not even qualified to be a one-on-one opponent. The difference in strength was already very obvious. In this case, when Long Haochen triggered the eternal melody and planned to return to the Tower of Eternity, through the connection with him, the Tower of Eternity immediately felt the huge power of death and the huge number of vengeful spirits in the necromancy domain. For humans, this was a terrifying and destructive power, but for the Tower of Eternity, this was an unparalleled tonic. How huge was the accumulation of Samakina for hundreds of years? And this was the pure power of death itself, so it did not need to be filtered too much. Therefore, the Tower of Eternity was excited. It originally had a strong autonomous ability and wisdom, so how could it let go of the existence of such a tonic? So, a projection was instantly shot into the space of the holy demon continent protecting Long Haochen, and at the same time began to crazily eat these tonic things. Samakina was completely unlucky. If he did not pay too much attention to Long Haochen and directly used the necromancy domain, but relied on his own powerful spiritual power to attack Long Haochen, this situation would not have happened. As a supreme artifact, the Tower of Eternity was undoubtedly attractive to the death attribute and vengeful spirits, and it was extremely powerful. The aura of light was also the nemesis of darkness. When Samakina met Electrolux, it was like a girl meeting a hungry and strong man. Yin and Yang complemented each other, and under the great disparity in strength, he could only be the 12 vengeful spirit kings frantically pounced on the Tower of Eternity. These 12 vengeful spirit kings were Samakina's trump card, evolved after devouring other vengeful spirits for hundreds of years. They even resisted the gods' descent before, and it was under the situation where they did not exert their full strength. However, at this time, when they encountered the Tower of Eternity, it was a completely different ending. These 12 vengeful spirit kings were indeed powerful, and the golden light that bloomed from the Tower of Eternity could at most make their bodies tremble, but it could not directly absorb their extremely condensed spiritual power. However, when the 12 vengeful spirit kings pounced on the Tower of Eternity, the result was completely different. The golden light that seemed to be harmless to them before suddenly became intense, and the golden color suddenly became incandescent. An indescribably terrifying spiritual shock suddenly burst out from the Tower of Eternity. The 12 vengeful spirit kings let out a shrill scream almost at the same time, and their huge and condensed bodies were actually shattered, turning into countless vengeful spirit fragments that spread in the air. Circles of intense, incandescent white light spread wildly, sucking and devouring these soul fragments. At this time, the light of the Tower of Eternity also completely broke through Samakina's death domain, turning into monstrous golden light that filled the sky and swept back towards Samakina's death domain. It did not only absorb the spiritual power of the death domain, but also the souls of the Emperor's Legion soldiers who had just died in the demon camp were also absorbed in this crazy explosion. This was the power of a supreme artifact. Even if it was just a projection of a supreme artifact, it still displayed incomparably terrifying power. As a supreme artifact, the Tower of Eternity itself had great wisdom. If Long Haochen wanted to truly control it, it would only be possible if he could pass all the tests left by the undead calamity Electrolux and finally reach the top of the tower to accept the inheritance of the holy law of necromancy. The Tower of Eternity itself had a strong sense of autonomy. When it felt that there was something in this plane that could produce great benefits for it, it would not hesitate to reflect the divine light into this world, trying to seize the greatest benefits for itself. Previously, when the 12 Wraiths Kings rushed towards the Tower of Eternity with the power of a supreme artifact, how could it not hurt these Wraiths Kings? It deliberately did not do so. This was because the Tower of Eternity could feel the power of these 12 Wraiths. If it only attacked them from a distance, they would definitely be scared away. The Tower of Eternity was only a projection, and it could not forcibly absorb these 12 Wraiths Kings from a distance. Therefore, it avoided the important point and focused on the trivial point to attract the 12 Wraiths Kings to itself. When these 12 Wraiths Kings touched the main body of the Tower of Eternity's projection, the Tower of Eternity transmitted to them the most basic power, which was the purest power of a supreme artifact. These 12 Wraiths Kings were indeed powerful, but compared to the full power of a supreme artifact, they were nothing. They were directly shaken into pieces. The moment the 12 Wraiths Kings were shaken into pieces, the undead demon god Samakina let out a monstrous scream. At this time, he had completely understood that the golden tower in front of him was definitely not something he could contend against. If he did not think of a way, he would not only be injured, but he would also be devoured by this terrifying tower with his huge undead power. Amidst the crazy scream, Samakina suddenly spat out a mouthful of gray blood. Immediately after, the undead demon god pillar in the distance suddenly erupted with an unparalleled intense light. The terrifying gray light formed a huge, ferocious demon in the sky, and it rushed towards the Tower of Eternity in a frenzy. It completely absorbed the undead territory in the air and forcibly withdrew it. This ferocious demon was the most original power of the undead demon god Samakina. It was also the most original power of the demons, and it did not belong to the undead attribute. At the same time, Samakina let out a strange scream. In the demon camp below, thousands of long screams sounded at the same time, and countless black lights were projected from the camp, shooting straight in the direction of Samakina. Including the bear Veilfar, the other 6 demon gods also arrived behind Samakina at the fastest speed, and each of them connected the power of their respective demon god pillars. The demon god pillars bloomed with different colors, and each transformed into the most primitive form of light and shadow of their own race. The 7 light and shadow shone brilliantly in the sky, exploding with the strongest attack towards the Tower of Eternity. The 7 demon gods joined forces to attack. This was a spectacular scene that had not been seen for nearly 1,000 years. Even the owner of the throne of God of Order and Law, the Knight of the Seal Long Tianin, under this monstrous pressure, was sent flying by the impact. Samakina was already going all out. His scream, just now, was borrowed from the power of all the demons. That was the bloodline magic that originated from the demons' demonic bloodline. Through this magic, he could instantly draw a part of the original power of each member of his race to replenish himself, thereby erupting with the most tyrannical strength. In this demon camp in front of the dragon resisting mountain pass, it could be said that the most fundamental strength and core power of the demons were here. Their amplification to Samakina could be imagined. Coupled with his demon god pillars, it instantly allowed Samakina to display the strongest attack he could. He had no choice but to go all out. Once the death domain was completely devoured, and the 12 Wraiths Kings were completely absorbed by the Tower of Eternity, then Samakina's cultivation base would be reduced by at least 50%, and his original power would be damaged. It would be impossible for him to maintain his position as the 4th demon god. Therefore, he would rather use bloodline magic to draw the power of his people, causing them to be greatly injured, in order to preserve his domain as much as possible. The power of the 7 demon gods' joint attack was indeed terrifying. This was no longer something that could be described by a simple forbidden spell. The incandescent light around the Tower of Eternity crazily twisted, but it did not have the slightest intention of resisting the joint power of the 7 demon gods. Just like that, it crazily devoured all the power of death that could be devoured, including the fragments of the 12 Wraiths Kings. Seeing that the 7 forbidden spell-level rays were about to bombard the Tower of Eternity, Long Tianin in the distance had already completely held his breath. His heart was trembling violently. He could see that Long Houchin was inside the Golden Tower. That tower was not a physical entity, and it was originally flashing with light. However, he was only one person. No matter how powerful the Knight of the Seal was, It was impossible for him to simultaneously resist the joint attack of the 7 demon gods, including the necromancer demon god Samakina and the bear Veilfar. The terrifying pressure and spiritual power fluctuations made it impossible for him to approach that range. However, Long Tianin's mouth opened wide in the next moment, just as the 7 rays of light were about to bombard the Tower of Eternity. The incandescent light suddenly converged. It was completely at the speed of light, and it was not affected by the pressure of the 7 demon gods at all. As the white light converged, whether it was the tower or Long Houchin, they completely disappeared with a whoosh. The all-out attack of the 7 demon gods' origin power completely missed and rushed into the sky. Their joint power was indeed terrifying. That was an all-out attack that mobilized the demon god pillars' origin power. The entire sky became rainbow-colored in an instant, and it did not dissipate for a long time. One could see that all the clouds in the sky within a radius of 1,000 miles had disappeared in an instant. Only the rainbow-colored light shone in the sky, and it did not fade for a long time. The 7 demon gods groaned at the same time, especially the necromancer demon god Samakina, who spat out a mouthful of gray blood again. His face was as pale as a sheet. However, he did not dare to rest at this moment. His hands moved quickly, absorbing the shattered necromancy domain and the remaining soul fragments of his 12 Wraiths Kings. At this moment, Samakina could not even cry. More than 40% of his necromancy domain had been devoured in this short period of time. Not only were the 12 Wraiths Kings destroyed, but the soul fragments of 5 of the Wraiths Kings had also been completely absorbed. This was the result of the 7 demon gods using their origin power to launch an all-out attack in time. Otherwise, the Tower of Eternity would not have left a single fragment for him if he had delayed any longer. Even the bear Veilfar, who was coveting Samakina's position as the 4th demon god pillar, could not bring himself to gloat at this moment. The shock in his heart was no less than Samakina's. That was just a knight on a golden pedestal. Moreover, the artifact that he had used previously should have been a shield. Why did it turn into a tower? Could it be that this knight on a golden pedestal actually had 2 artifacts? Moreover, that artifact could no longer be described as an ordinary artifact. It had a terrifying restraining effect on the necromancer demon god Samakina. Ever since the start of the Holy War, this was the first time the bear Veilfar felt so pressured by a human. He did not expect the Knights Templars to have such a powerful trump card. After launching a sneak attack on their main camp, they even plotted against the necromancer demon god Samakina. Samakina had definitely suffered a huge blow this time. He probably would not be able to recover to his previous peak state even after 50 years. As the saying goes, the fox grieves for the hare. Other than Samakina, the other 6 demon gods' expressions were extremely ugly. However, they did not take any further action. Using the demon god pillar to launch an attack from the origin power was also a huge drain on them. On the other hand, what about the Knights Templars? What losses did they suffer in this sneak attack? Even if the 7 demon gods were unwilling to admit it, they knew that their losses were 0. Yes, there were no losses. The 7 demon gods had all attacked, but not a single enemy was left alive. Under such circumstances, who knew what other trump cards the Knights Templars had up their sleeves? They were demon gods, not death warriors. The fear in their hearts far exceeded their anger. None of them wanted to become the next necromancer demon god Samakina. Therefore, they could only hover in the air as they watched the owner of the throne of God of order and law, the supreme commander of the Knights Templars, the Knight of the Seal, Long Tianin, fly back to Yulong Pass. However, the 7 demon gods did not know that at this very moment the powerhouses of the Knights Templars were even more shocked than them. Including Long Tianin, no one knew what had happened. To the lower-level knight, they were erupting in earth-shattering cheers. Everyone could see that the demons had suffered a huge loss. However, the higher-level knight only had shock, and confusion in their hearts. They had all seen the Golden Pagoda, but no one knew what it was. They had never heard of the existence of such a powerful artifact among the Knights Templars. Everyone was full of questions, and so was Long Tianyin. However, he was more worried about Long Haochen's safety. How much did Long Haochen have to pay to activate such a terrifying power? It was probably the price of his life. If the Tower of Eternity had not chosen to escape from the final attack of the 7 demon gods, Long Tianyin would have been even more worried. But did Long Haochen really pay the price? Yes, he paid the price. He paid the price of his spiritual power increasing exponentially. With a flash of golden light, Long Haochen appeared directly in the first floor of the Tower of Eternity. He almost subconsciously sat down with his legs crossed. Circles of blazing white light rose wildly around his body, and a terrifying amount of light element spiritual power rushed into his body at an astonishing speed. Even if Long Haochen was unwilling to get help from the Tower of Eternity, he had no choice now. The Tower of Eternity could even completely suppress the demon god of death, Samakina, let alone him who only had a rank 8 cultivation base. At this time, Long Haochen only felt like his body was being burned by a raging fire, and the 5 spiritual orifices in his body were all trembling at an astonishing speed. The external light element spiritual power was extremely pure, but it was mixed with some death aura. After pouring into his body, the 5 spiritual orifices needed to continuously filter it in order to completely expel this death aura. On this point, Long Haochen was extremely determined. He could use this light element spiritual power directly, because its essence was also extremely pure. After all, the Tower of Eternity was created by the previous generation's Son of Light, Electrolux. His requirements for the purity of the light element would not be lower than Long Haochen's. However, even if there was a trace of death aura in this light element spiritual power, Long Haochen would never classify it as his own divine power. Seeing Sun Moon Divine Snail was too important for Long Haochen. The advice he received from Sun Moon Divine Snail was even more helpful to him than the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield. Guarding one's heart was the most important thing for the Son of Light. Getting the artifact could only enhance one's power, but if one could not guard one's heart, the Son of Light would also be polluted and go astray. Therefore, no matter what kind of power Long Haochen got, the most important thing for him was to keep his heart pure and not be polluted by anything, and naturally not be polluted by the death aura. It was impossible for him to accept the inheritance of the holy law of necromancy, sleeping calamity Electrolux. The sudden influx of spiritual power surprised Long Haochen because it was pure spiritual power instead of concentrated light elements. In other words, this spiritual power was like his own and could completely fit with his body and become part of his strength. Long Haochen had encountered this kind of situation before, but it was not as strong and huge as this time. He faintly understood that this should be a kind of feedback to him after the Tower of Eternity had obtained huge benefits. When the projection of the Tower of Eternity appeared, Long Haochen himself was dumbfounded. The heat in his chest instantly turned into a heat in his whole body. The feeling of burning him completely made him fall into a semi-conscious state. However, his mental strength was much stronger than an ordinary person's. Hence, he could still sense some changes in the outside world even under such circumstances. In Long Haochen's perception, the Tower of Eternity was like a living body, not like a building or artifact. In the battle with the necromancy demon god Samakina, it had been leading Samakina by the nose. This was most obvious when it used the power of origin to plot against the 12 Wraiths Kings of the necromancy demon god. From the Tower of Eternity, Long Haochen felt a heart-palpitating greed. The entire Tower of Eternity was fully opened, crazily devouring the power of Samakina's territory and the countless wraiths in it. When Samakina realized that something was wrong, he tried his best to launch an attack on the origin with the other 6 demon gods. The Tower of Eternity immediately left with Long Haochen. Even the soul fragments of the Wraiths Kings scattered in the air were no longer absorbed. It had no intention of staying. Because it was closely related to the Tower of Eternity, Long Houchen's feelings were much deeper than those of Samakina or Long Tianyin. When the 7 demon gods joined forces to launch an attack on the Tower of Eternity, Long Houchen felt that the Tower of Eternity actually exuded a disdainful emotion. But it still didn't clash head-on. Long Houchen was almost certain that the Tower of Eternity absolutely had the ability to resist that blow. But there was no doubt that the power it had to pay would be extremely huge. Therefore, the Tower of Eternity immediately left with Long Houchen, not because it couldn't compete with the power of Samakina, but because it wasn't worth it. In other words, if the Tower of Eternity resisted their attack, then it would consume a lot of its own energy, and this consumption would be greater than the benefits it gained from the collision. Therefore, after weighing the benefits, the Tower of Eternity thought that there was no need to clash head-on. Therefore, it calmly broke through the space and left with Long Houchen. Even the 7 demon gods couldn't do anything to him. For the Tower of Eternity's performance throughout the process, it gave Long Houchen a chill from the bottom of his heart. The Tower of Eternity was too rational. It was completely interest-centered and didn't consider anything else. Moreover, Long Houchen could clearly feel that the Tower of Eternity had the ability to advance at any time. However, in the past battles, the Tower of Eternity really helped him only once, and that time he was on the verge of death. And it was just a flash. When Long Houchen and Kai faced danger last time, and he tried his best to protect Kai, the Tower of Eternity didn't move at all. But this time he also had the ability to teleport away. But the Tower of Eternity appeared again after feeling the huge benefits. This kind of feeling was very uncomfortable for the kind-hearted Long Houchen. The appearance of the Tower of Eternity today gave him a deeper understanding of this transcendental artifact. He vaguely discovered that even the soul imprint left by eternal sleep calamity, Electrolux, couldn't completely control this transcendental artifact. The Tower of Eternity completely had its own wisdom and judgment. In other words, even if he really got the inheritance of Electrolux, when he wanted to do something that was detrimental to the Tower of Eternity, or something that consumed a lot of the Tower of Eternity, the Tower of Eternity could still resist him, or even not be used by him. If Long Houchen was a person who could be driven by benefits, then he would definitely think that the Tower of Eternity was a double-edged sword. As long as it was used well, it would be of great help to him. The way to use it was very simple. It was enough to maintain a win-win situation with the Tower of Eternity. However, Long Houchen didn't have such an idea in his heart at all. He didn't want to have a win-win situation with the Tower of Eternity at all. This transcendental artifact completely absorbed death energy to strengthen itself, and its benefits were even more unacceptable to Long Houchen. Today, although the Tower of Eternity had severely injured the undead demon god Samakina and had greatly shocked the 7 demon gods of the demons, it also pushed Long Houchen further and further away. It also strengthened Long Houchen's belief that he would never accept the inheritance of Electrolux again. With strong mental control, Long Houchen arranged his own spiritual power into a large net in his body. No trace of death energy could enter his spiritual power. Only the spiritual power that had been completely filtered could be combined with his own spiritual power and enter the spiritual aperture. Doing so would definitely waste a large part of the spiritual power that was trying to integrate with him, but it was more important to maintain the purity of his own spiritual power. Vaguely, Long Houchen felt that there was a spiritual power disturbance in the center of his buttocks, and that was the next step for him to open the spiritual aperture. Chest, lower abdomen, eyebrows, shoulders. These were the 5 spiritual apertures that he had opened. These 5 fulcrums supported his torso and arms, respectively. Next, what he needed the most were naturally the fulcrums of his legs. The position of the Huantiao acupuncture point on the buttocks was naturally the most suitable choice. However, what Long Houchen didn't expect was that the Huantiao acupuncture point on his shoulders had begun to feel something just after the acupuncture points on his shoulders were opened. Inspiration and understanding always came and went quickly. Long Houchin naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. While absorbing the external spiritual power, he carefully felt the restless fluctuations. Even if he couldn't break through in one go, the experience of this feeling was also very beneficial for his future breakthroughs. Time passed by minute. It could be seen that on the first floor of the Tower of Eternity, layers of golden light continued to rush in the direction of Long Houchin from the surrounding tower and constantly integrated into his body. A part was peeled off by him, and a part was absorbed by him. At the same time, the looming golden light began to appear on his body again. If Long Houchin chose to meditate at this time, then he was likely to open the 6th and 7th spiritual apertures in one go. Unfortunately, this was obviously not what he wanted to do now. Therefore, after the spiritual power transferred to him by the Tower of Eternity ended, he also woke up from the state of cultivation. Taking a deep breath, his body naturally floated up. Long Houchin's face couldn't help but show surprise, but after the surprise, there was a trace of unwillingness. He really didn't want to accept the help of the Tower of Eternity anymore, because this help was something he didn't want and couldn't repay. He even decided that he would never set foot on the 3rd floor of the Tower of Eternity. However, he couldn't deny that he had gained great benefits from the Tower of Eternity. After his cultivation broke through to the 8th rank, although Long Houchin had been cultivating, it would take more than a little time to fill the spiritual apertures on his shoulders. Even if he was the son of light and had the constitution of a god's favored, and the speed of absorbing light elements was much faster than ordinary cultivators, it would probably take nearly 2 years to accumulate 20,000 spiritual power. After all, spiritual power wasn't a simple number. For example, if the spiritual power of the 7th rank knight was 1, then the spiritual power of the 8th rank knight was concentrated 1. In other words, there was an essential difference between the 7th rank and the 8th rank spiritual power. Perhaps this quantity of spiritual power was the same in the overall volume and the number of elements, but the more condensed spiritual power, the more powerful it was in actual combat. This was also the strength of the Ling Gang. Therefore, when Long Houchin's cultivation entered the 8th rank, he already had a total of 5 spiritual apertures, but the speed of his spiritual power improvement was slower than before, because in the process of cultivation, there was an additional process of compression. This time, when he finished his cultivation, he was surprised to find that the 2 spiritual apertures on his shoulders had been filled by 1/3. In addition to the part of spiritual power that he obtained from his own cultivation, the benefits brought to him by the Tower of Eternity this time were a total of 5,000 of the purest spiritual power. This was caused by a large part of it after he filtered it himself. Otherwise, the number would be higher. Long Houchin's current total spiritual power was close to the height of 37,000. It could be said to be a leap forward. Turning around, Long Houchin took a complicated look at the statue at the end of the 1st floor of the Tower of Eternity. After calming himself down, he immediately launched the teleportation. He didn't want to let himself have any nostalgia for this place. Whenever he thought of how the holy law of necromancy, sleeping disaster Electrolux, killed countless humans with this transcendental artifact, his heart would inexplicably ache. The golden light shone, and when Long Houchin reappeared in the night sky, the sky was already silent. Fortunately, the golden light only flashed, and because Long Houchin didn't open his spiritual wings, his body immediately fell to the ground after a moment of stagnation. Chapter 182. As his body fell, Long Houchin gently pressed down with both of his palms. At the same time, he took a deep breath, and his body suddenly floated down like a feather. At this time, it was close to dawn, but the sky was still dark. His light spiritual power was too obvious, and in order to avoid complications, he used the most difficult method to control his body. The main reason why he didn't want to be discovered by the demons was that he didn't want the demons to know that he had to return from afar after being teleported to the Tower of Eternity. If this secret was known by the enemy, it would be easy to arrange a strategy to deal with him. Therefore, Long Houchin would rather take a risk. Fortunately, his previous position was not too high, about 400 meters from the ground. After a series of chi, lightning, and body slapping, he finally managed to slow down his falling speed as much as possible. Seeing that he was about to fall to the ground, Long Houchin's body slightly curled up, and at the same time he completely relied on his physical strength to kick behind him. It must be known that his current external spiritual power had already exceeded 20,000. Such an all-out explosive kick directly caused an explosion in the air, and at the same time it once again slowed down his falling speed. His body fell diagonally to the ground, and after a series of rolls, all the momentum was dissipated. He was wearing the epic grade adamantine foundation armor, which also helped him to a large extent reduce the pressure on his body after landing. After a series of rolls, Long Houchin jumped up and flew in the direction of the dragon resisting mountain pass. His powerful spiritual power had already concealed his figure as much as possible when he returned here. Therefore, it was not until he arrived at the dragon-resisting mountain pass that the Knights Templars of the dragon-resisting mountain pass discovered his return through visual observation. Naturally, there would be no misunderstanding. The adamantine foundation armor on Long Houchin was a symbol of his identity. Moreover, he was the only adamantine foundation warrior who had not returned. Therefore, when Long Houchin climbed up the Yulong Pass, what greeted him was monstrous cheers and countless respectful gazes. Large groups of Knight Templars stared at Long Houchin with blazing eyes and used their fists to fiercely beat their chest armor to show the highest respect for Long Houchin. This was their respect for the new Holy Knight. Even the Knight of the Seal Long Tianin did not understand how Long Houchin injured the necromancer Samakina, let alone these ordinary warriors. In their eyes, it was their powerful Holy Knight captain who defeated the enemy's most powerful demon god. Not only that, but the Holy Knight captain wasn't even a divine knight. Therefore, in their hearts, Long Houchin, the acting Holy Knight, had been naturally wiped. At the same time, they were even more confident in this holy war. When Long Houchin stood in front of Long Tianin again, Long Tianin suddenly realized that he was at a loss for words. Back then, he sensed that Long Houchin was fine and should have escaped to another space. But how did he do it? After reaching the Tier 9, one would indeed have the ability to shatter space for a short distance to a certain extent. However, it could only be done when the space was extremely calm and stable. But what about when Long Houchin traveled through space? When the 7 demon gods joined forces, the space was destroyed to an unknown extent. In an instant, the shattered and torn space almost distorted the entire battlefield. Even under such circumstances, Long Houchin was still able to calmly traverse through space. This was something that Long Tianin couldn't do, absolutely couldn't do. Moreover, Long Houchin had left for such a long time. In other words, he definitely had the coordinates of another space. Otherwise, if he got lost while traveling through space, he would never be able to return. Grandfather. Long Houchin bowed to Long Tianin like a knight. His attitude was also much gentler than before. When he had been attacked by Samakina, he had sensed Long Tianin risking his life to save him. And before he was teleported away, he had also seen Long Tianin's presence. Naturally, the degree of recognition he had for his grandfather was also a little greater. Long Tianin smiled bitterly. I don't know what to say anymore. What was that pagoda that appeared around you? Long Houchin pondered for a moment, then said, I don't want to lie to you, but this is a secret that I can't tell you. I can only tell you that the only one it can restrain is the demon god Samakina. Moreover, I can't control it. It appeared on its own. There is only a bridge between us. It was also the one that teleported me away. What surprised Long Houchin was that Long Tianin didn't pursue the matter. His gaze gradually became calm. Is your body all right? Did Samakina hurt you? Long Houchin shook his head. I'm fine. I can return to the battlefield at any time. Grandfather, it's almost daybreak. The demons will probably launch a retaliatory counterattack. I'm already prepared for battle. Please give the order. Looking at him, Long Tianyin was speechless. He couldn't help but say angrily, "What order? Your judgment is wrong. I can tell you clearly that there is a 70% chance that the demons won't attack today. Didn't you see it when you came back? The demon god Samakina's demon god pillar has already lost its light. This time, you've severely injured him. His undead domain was even torn apart by your pagoda. What do you want me to say about you? Your grandfather Yang and I told you to hide your strength and not expose your identity, but you hid the abilities that the demons know. Just because of this, you immediately became the focus of attention. You have 2 divine weapons on you. It would be strange if the demons didn't pay attention to you. I estimate that it won't be long before the demon emperor knows of your existence. How can I send you to the battlefield? You said that your pagoda can only target the demon god Samakina. If the other demon gods launch another attack against you, what if something happens to you?" Although Long Tianyin was angry, Long Haochen's heart warmed. He could clearly hear the deep concern and worry in his grandfather's words. "Grandfather, then I'll just defend the city. Even if the demon gods want to target me at Yulong Pass, they have to think twice. We know that the pagoda can only target Samakina, but they don't. I don't think many demon gods would dare to take this risk. Samakina is a good example. Besides, you can't blame me for this. Gold has to shine. You don't want your grandson to be mediocre, right?" At this point, Long Haochen couldn't help but laugh. He looked at Long Tianyin with a somewhat shameless expression. Long Tianyin also couldn't help but smile. He rarely smiled, but looking at his grandson standing in front of him, he really couldn't contain the joy in his heart. After worrying, he saw how powerful his grandson was. It could be said that he couldn't find a single flaw in Long Haochen. He wasn't even 20 years old, but he already had the strength of a Tier 8 and had at least 2 divine weapons. Although he still couldn't fully use these divine weapons, given his age and speed of improvement, in a few years he would really have the strength to fight the demon gods head-on. This was his grandson. He was a hero and leader who was bound to leave a strong mark in human history. Taking a deep breath, Long Tianyin said, "This time the demons are afraid of us. According to our calculations, almost all the hell demons in the Emperor's 3 main legions have been wiped out. The Emperor's legion that has lost its magic attack power is like a toothless tiger. There's nothing to be afraid of. Samakina, the demon god of necromancy, was seriously injured by you. He's the strongest among the demon gods outside. Just as you said, these demon gods probably won't dare to act rashly. At most, they'll maintain the current situation. As long as there are no reinforcements, they won't dare to fight us. So, I don't plan to let you continue fighting." "Ah." Long Haochen panicked. "Grandfather, you can't do that. You and Grandfather Yang must keep your word. If you don't let me fight, how am I going to complete my mission of 10 million merit points? I still need to form a new team with my companions and go to the rear of the demons to slaughter them." Long Tianyin stood up and slowly walked in front of Long Haochen. There was a hint of disdain in his eyes. His majestic body looked so imposing. Standing in front of Long Haochen, he gave off the feeling that he was an indestructible mountain. "Long Haochen, don't worry. Your grandfather Yang and I don't think the same way. You're my grandson and my only grandson. You're the son of light, a god's chosen one, the future hope of mankind. If I only protect you under my wings, when can you become the leader of mankind? When can you lead mankind to destroy the demons? What you need to do is to constantly exercise and improve yourself through constant sharpening, just like what you've done before. I believe that you have the ability to protect yourself and create more glory. So, Grandfather won't stop you from going to the battlefield. After 2 consecutive days of fighting, you've scared off the enemy once, causing the demons to lose the opportunity to obtain a large number of corpses to replenish themselves. You've also seriously injured the demon god of necromancy, Samakina, further restraining the momentum of the demon army. Grandfather will remember these two great contributions for you. As the Temple Master of the Knights Templars, I have the right to award you with sufficient merit points. So, I've decided to award you 500,000 merit points as a reward for your role in turning the tide of the battle. 500,000 merit points. Long Houchin was shocked, but at the same time he couldn't help but worry. Grandfather, this isn't favoritism, is it? Bullsh *T. Long Tianyin raised his hand and knocked Long Houchin's head. He scolded with a smile. Go ask around in the Knights Templars. Who doesn't know that your grandfather is the strictest and fairest knight of the seal? I own the throne of God of order and law. If I can't even be fair, how can I continue to be recognized by the throne of God? Don't worry, I'll only give you a small reward, not a lot. Think about it, if it wasn't for you covering the rear, how many of the 50 Mithril Foundation Knight who went with you could have come back alive? Just your action of covering the rear at the cost of your life is worth 500,000 merit points. This is what you exchanged for with your bravery, your life, and your spirit of sacrifice. Although I was very angry at the time, angry that you didn't care about your own safety, but as your grandfather, as the Temple Master of the Knights Templars, you are my pride. Long Tianyin's grandson, you didn't abandon your comrades in the face of danger. You used the most direct action to prove your bravery. Looking at the surging emotions in his grandfather's eyes, Long Houchin's eyes couldn't help but moisten. No matter how strong he was, no matter how calm he was still only 20 years old. To be able to obtain his grandfather's recognition was too important for him. Long Tianyin took a deep breath, calmed his surging emotions, and continued, You've done well, but it's not suitable for you to continue staying here. Your brilliance should shine where it's more needed. Our dragon-resisting mountain pass is unhindered, and you're easily targeted by the enemy. So, after thinking about it, I've decided to give you a mission. After completing this mission, it'll be equivalent to completing millions of merit points. Naturally, you can reorganize your monster hunters. I haven't told you yet. This time when your grandfather Yang returned to the Sanctuary Alliance, he wanted to discuss with the other temple higher-ups how to use your ability to destroy the demon god pillars. How the Alliance can cooperate with you to maximize your strength. Upon hearing that he could reorganize his monster hunters, Long Houchin was so excited that he almost jumped up. Grandfather, then you can issue the mission. No matter what, I will definitely complete it. Long Tianyin said, Don't be so full of yourself. How can a mission equivalent to millions of merit points be so simple? You can go back and rest first. Tomorrow, you will set off to complete this mission. This mission is very simple. You will go alone, and as the Holy Knight of the Knights Templars, you will participate in the defense of the other 5 temples' impregnable passes. In each impregnable pass, you will obtain at least 1,000,000 merit points or make a huge contribution, like last night. After completing the battle of all 5 impregnable passes, you will naturally meet up with your companions. At that time, the Alliance will definitely give you a new mission. Do you understand? Happiness came so suddenly that Long Houchin couldn't react for a moment. He would head to the other 5 temples' battles and meet up with his companions one by one. Without a doubt, the mission that Long Tianyin gave him was much easier than Yang Haohen's original mission of millions of merit points. Moreover, as he continued to visit the fortresses, he would be able to meet up with his companions one by one. How could he not be excited? At that moment, Long Houchin was so excited that he was speechless. Long Tianyin faintly smiled and said, Is it because you are thinking about going to the Exorcist Mountain Pass to meet your little girlfriend that you are so happy? That's right, the closest place to the dragon-resisting Mountain Pass of the Knights Templars. Wasn't the Exorcist Mountain Pass where the Assassin Temple was located? I was there. Chapter 183. Hearing his grandfather's reminder, Long Houchin's emotions fluctuated violently again. He didn't hide his emotions and nodded vigorously. Long Tianyin sighed softly. It's been hard on you kids. If it weren't for the demons, Grandpa would have already hosted your wedding. Treat her well. That old fellow Shang Yu doesn't have a good temper." In terms of seniority, Shang Yu is actually 1 generation older than Long Tianyin. However, in terms of cultivation, Long Tianyin, who possessed the throne of God, was definitely stronger. Long Haochen nodded repeatedly and said, "Grandpa, can I leave now?" Long Tianyin snapped, "No. All you think about is your wife. Don't you want to spend more time with your grandfather? From now on, you will stay by my side until you leave tomorrow." Hearing his grandfather's words, Long Haochen gradually calmed down. "Grandfather," Long Tianyin waved his hand and said, "I understand. When I was your age, I didn't know how many times more rebellious you were. You've already done very well. However, you have to remember that just because Grandpa supports you in reorganizing monster hunters doesn't mean that I'm worried about your safety. You're my only grandson. Not only do you have to protect yourself for the Alliance, but you also have to protect Grandpa. If the Alliance loses you, they will lose a huge helper. If Grandfather loses you, he will lose his family. Do you understand?" Long Haochen fell silent. He slowly took a step forward and gave Long Tianyin a big hug. Long Tianyin laughed. This was the first time in many years that he had laughed so happily from the bottom of his heart. He knew that from this moment on, he really did have a grandson. Just as Long Tianyin predicted, after dawn, the demons did not attack, but the demon camp was quickly mobilizing. The heavily injured Emperor's legion moved inwards, healing the wounded and dying at the same time. Of course, the 3 forbidden spells were not completely useless to the demon army. At least the corpses that didn't turn into ashes could be used as food. The entire demon army enjoyed a high-class meal made of Emperor's Legion soldiers. Because Samakina was heavily injured, he directly merged with the demon god Pillar to cultivate in seclusion. The command of the demon camp was also given to the bear Veilfar. However, at this time, Veilfar did not dare to overexert the strength of the demons. The reason why he did not immediately start the war was that the food supply had been supplemented to a certain extent, and more importantly, the demons were now weak. Samakina had mobilized the power of all the demons to launch a terrifying attack, causing the demons to fall into a great degree of weakness. The air force of the demon army was almost entirely composed of demons. Under such circumstances, how could they launch a war against the dragon resisting Mountain Pass? The battle with Long Tianyin and Long Haochen also made Veilfar fully understand the strength and foundation of the human race. He naturally would not advance rashly. At least, he needed to rest for a period of time before he could launch a war again. 1 day later, when the curtain of night fell again, 2 figures quietly left the dragon resisting Mountain Pass, identified the direction, and went straight to the south in the windy and snowy night. Whether it was the death demon god Samakina or the bear Veilfar, both did not know that the holy knight of the Knights Templars who brought them infinite surprises had already left. Moreover, now the dragon resisting Mountain Pass only had 1 knight of the seal, Long Tianyin, overseeing it. Of course, the real trump card of the Knights Templars was not Long Haochen. The reason why Long Tianyin dared to confront the demon army with such a lineup was naturally because he had something to rely on. After leaving the Knights Templars, Long Haochen and Han Yu felt like they were birds flying high in the sky. They could finally reorganize the team. Long Haochen understood that although on the surface his grandfather had arranged a mission for him, in fact, Long Tianyin simply did not collect his current merit points. In other words, whether he obtained 1 million merit points in each stronghold was something that no one would check. Therefore, after leaving the dragon-resisting Mountain Pass, it was equivalent to completing a mission to reunite with their companions. Everyone had already been separated for more than a year and a half, and the longing between their companions far surpassed everything else. Moreover, the first stronghold they had to go to was the Exorcist Mountain Pass, where the Assassin Temple was located, and Kair was there. Long Haochen could clearly feel that he was unable to calm down. The strong sense of excitement even caused the spiritual power in his body to fluctuate irregularly, affecting the efficiency of his absorption of the light element in the outside world. However, he was unable to control his emotions. "Kair, are you all right? It's been a year and a half. Have you recovered your memories? Did you think of me?" Thinking of this, Long Houchin wished he could grow a few more pairs of wings and quickly fly to Kair's side. After leaving the dragon-resisting mountain pass, although they were heading south towards the Exorcist mountain pass, they first headed southwest, thus entering the interior of the Temple League. After all, the demon army was eyeing them covetously, and they did not want to encounter any trouble. But after entering the interior of the Temple League with the Exorcist mountain range as a natural barrier, they could put all their energy into hurrying on the road, heading towards the Exorcist mountain pass as fast as possible. The Star King's strength could support 2 people, not to mention that Hanyu had a light physique, and his innate internal spiritual energy was as high as 80. Therefore, the Star King's affinity with him was second only to Long Houchin. With Long Houchin directly replenishing his spiritual energy, they flew towards the Exorcist mountain pass as fast as they could. The Exorcist mountain pass. The Holy War had been going on for a year and a half, and the battles were getting more and more desperate. Among all the 6 great temple, the Southern Guard mountain pass had the most difficulty in resisting the demons, and the Exorcist mountain pass was the second. Every human stronghold was led by a temple, although the Assassin Temple and the Knights Templars had some disparity in overall strength. The disparity was not that big. But the reason why the Exorcist mountain pass had such a hard time resisting was because of their profession. Although the knight couldn't use a mount when defending a stronghold, they were still heavy armor warriors. Once they dismounted, they were still heavy infantry, and guarding the stronghold was like a metal barrier. But the assassin couldn't. In terms of attack power, the assassin far surpassed the knight, but in terms of defense, they were much worse than the knight. The assassin was good at hiding, killing, and taking the head of a general among thousands of enemy troops. But attacking and defending were the things they were the least good at, especially in this kind of defensive battle. Therefore, in this battle, the Assassin Temple could be said to have suffered disastrous losses. If not for the Knights Templars' brilliant Angel Knight regiment inside the Exorcist Mountain Pass, the Exorcist Mountain Pass would have already been breached several times. The assistance that the Knights Templars provided to the Assassin Temple was enormous. But after all, the Holy War appeared at 6 strongholds at the same time. Every temple had to first complete their own defense mission before they could have the ability to help the other temple. Among the 72 demon god pillars of the demons, the top 3 demon gods and races did not appear in the Holy War, while the 4th ranked demon god of death, Semikina, and the 6th ranked the bear Veilfar were at the dragon-resisting mountain pass. The Knights Templars were under such enormous pressure. Even if they wanted to help the Assassin Temple, they were powerless to do so. In the past 1.5 years, a third of the Assassin Temple's upper echelons had already died on the battlefield. From Shunyu, almost everyone was injured. Some senior powerhouses of the Assassin Temple had also thrown themselves into the battlefield, fighting to the death with the enemy. Almost every time they repelled the demon's attack, the Assassin Temple had to pay an enormous price. At this time, the Assassin Temple's Temple Master Sheng Yu stood at the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. The Exorcist Mountain Pass was also a natural stronghold. Compared to the dragon-resisting Mountain Pass, his advantage was that he didn't have to worry about the rear. With the demon-resisting mountain range, he didn't need to be afraid of being surrounded by the demons. As long as he blocked the demon army's attack from one direction, it was enough. But compared to the dragon-resisting mountain pass, its natural stronghold was a bit worse. The outside didn't have the vile environment to affect the demons. At the same time, the Exorcist Mountain Pass couldn't be compared to the dragon-resisting mountain pass, which was more than 200 meters high. On the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, all the battlements had already disappeared. They had all been damaged in the continuous war, and the number of magicians that could release magic from the top of the wall was less than 50. This was the last magic power of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Almost all the powerhouses of the Assassin Temple were resisting the enemy at the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. They didn't know how long they could resist. Fortunately, the Exorcist Mountain Pass was seriously damaged, and the demons attacking them were the same. In the last 6 months, the frequency of attacks was no longer as high as before. At this time, it was at the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. She was dressed in black without any armor. Her eyes were calm and cold. A year and a half had passed, and she was already a young lady. Her figure was more slender and well-proportioned. Almost all the good points that could appear on a girl could be found on her body. Compared to the time when she separated from Long Houchin and the others, the current Kai was a bit more chilly. Although she was far from being compared to before she lost her memory, at least the slaughter on the battlefield was no longer enough to make her feel frightened. Shang Lingxin stood on the other side of Shengyu. His complexion was very pale, and his right arm was wrapped in thick gauze. In the Exorcist Mountain Pass, there wasn't even a priest. They could only rely on the doctors to treat their injuries. The severity of the situation could be imagined. A great-grandfather, let me go! Kai, suddenly said to Xingyu. The demons had already attacked the top of the city wall. Both sides had already entered into the most desperate melee. From this, it could be seen that the defense of the Exorcist Mountain Pass had already fallen to the critical point. Otherwise, how could the enemy attack the top of the city wall? The main force of the demons attacking the Exorcist Mountain Pass consisted of Demon Bird, Twin-Headed Demon Vulture, Flame Demon Mantis, Wolf Demon, as well as a large number of dual-blade demons and demon eye warlocks. Although the number of experts in this group was far less than that of the dragon resisting Mountain Pass, they won in quantity. It was also because of the quantity that they had enough corpses as food. Among them, the Demon Bird and Twin-Headed Demon Vulture formed the Air Force. The Wolf Demon led the dual-blade demons to the front, while the Flame Demon Mantis and Demon Eye Warlocks attacked from the rear. In contrast, on the side of the Assassin Temple, there was a mixed army of assassins, warriors, and knight. The knight and the warriors were in the front, while the assassins were doing their best to kill. However, in the long course of the Holy War, a large number of magicians and priests had perished under the enemy's preemptive attacks. This made it extremely difficult for the soldiers of the dragon resisting Mountain Pass to resist the demon's attack, especially the attacks of the Demon Eye Warlocks and the Flame Demon Mantis, which could cause enormous damage to the low-level warriors. For this reason, the Assassin Temple had already organized countless suicide squads to specifically target them. But the demon god in charge of the battlefield wasn't an easy person to deal with. He had long since prepared a countermeasure and specially organized a team of experts from various races to deal with these suicide squads. Just like the dragon resisting Mountain Pass, the ninth-step experts of both sides wouldn't easily join the battle. They restrained each other and mutually deterred each other. But this meat-grinder holy war had already caused the Exorcist Mountain Pass to be on the verge of collapse with a cup of water. Even though the Demon Emperor had ordered the demon army to fight a protracted war, to continuously consume the accumulated strength of humanity, and not to rashly enter the territory of the Temple League. That was because he didn't want the human world to be thoroughly destroyed. But this didn't affect the destruction the demons caused to the stronghold, and the killing and wounding of the human army. Compared to treating their own people as food, the demons clearly preferred the cleaner humans. Shang Yu slightly nodded towards Kai. Pay attention to your safety. Kai responded, and her figure flickered, descending from the second floor of the Exorcist Mountain Pass to the first floor of the battlefield. After such a long time, she had long since adapted to everything here, and also adapted to many things after losing her memory. A pitch-black light streaked across the horizon, and a cold aura almost instantly caused the temperature in the air to drop by several degrees. Dressed in black, Kai's purple hair fluttered in the wind, and a huge death scythe quietly appeared in her hand. A deep and gloomy black light burst forth from the death scythe, and a huge black blade of light accompanied her as she descended from the sky. The dual-bladed demons that were frantically climbing up the Exorcist mountain pass were immediately swept away like wheat being cut. All of them that came into contact with the black blade of light were instantly fragmented. A strong killing intent suddenly spread out, and a large number of low-level demons were directly turned into fragments by the death scythe. Kai's awakening of the god's favored constitution was very different from that of Long Houchen. Long Houchen was the child of light, a god's favored. His awakening was more important in all aspects, including obtaining the goddess of light's favor, increasing his affinity with the light element, and the sublimation of his various qualities. But this wasn't the case for Kai. After Kai's awakening of the god's favored constitution, the greatest improvement was shown in the death scythe evolved from the sword of Samsara in her hand. Since childhood, she had fused with the sword of Samsara, and after experiencing an unknown amount of pain and tempering, she gradually fused with this divine weapon. This process could be said to have run through all of Kai's cultivation. As a result, her compatibility with the sword of Samsara was far higher than that of Long Houchen and his divine weapons. In terms of amplification, Kai's awakening couldn't compare to Long Houchen's. But in terms of divine weapons, Long Houchen was far inferior to her. Kai's purple hair fluttered even though there was no wind. After losing her memories, she had lost her original cold and frightening temperament. But every time she truly summoned her death scythe, this temperament seemed to return. Kai's killing intent burst forth, and regardless of whether it was the demons or the experts on her side, when they felt this chill, they unconsciously retreated. So much so that with Kai as the center, an empty space with a diameter of several tens of meters immediately appeared. Her beautiful face was expressionless, but her pair of bright eyes were filled with boundless killing intent. When she had just returned to the Exorcist mountain pass, Kai was actually quite repulsed by killing. After all, after losing her memories, she was only equivalent to a young girl. How could it be so easy for her to come into contact with killing? Even with the influence of the death scythe, in the depths of her heart, there was still a strong resistance. For this reason, Shang Yu specially let her stay in the wounded barracks of the Exorcist mountain pass for a period of time. Every day after cultivating, she would go to the wounded barracks to help with some simple work. There, Kai saw too many tragedies. She would never forget the first time she entered the wounded barracks. She saw a soldier who had lost both his legs and an arm, using his remaining arm to stab himself in the chest with a dagger. He had a will, which was personally handed over by Kai to Shang Yu. The will wrote, "Nyo Nyo Daodu, Daddy loves you, but Daddy can no longer accompany you. Hateful demons, attempting to invade our home. Daddy and my companions used our lives to defend our alliance. The alliance is everyone's home. Daddy died a worthy death, but Daddy really can't bear to part with you. Daddy really wants to see you and your mother again. I really want to be like before, to have you sit on my lap and hug you. I want to kiss your delicate little faces and watch you wipe your snot on Daddy's face with a naughty smile. Daddy misses you, but Daddy really can't hold on any longer. Listen to Mommy. Daddy's pension should be able to support you as you grow up. You must remember, Daddy's death is for the Alliance, for us humans. Daddy hopes to be able to become your pride. If there comes a day when the Alliance needs you, then Daddy hopes that you can also pick up your weapons and bravely stand on the walls of the Exorcist mountain pass to fight against foreign enemies. Daddy, who will always love you deeply." When she finished reading the will, Kai was sluggish for a full hour. From then on, the fear in her eyes and heart disappeared. In the wounded barracks, she wasn't afraid of dirt or tiredness. She did her best to serve the wounded soldiers. This continued for a full 3 months. 3 months later, Xingyu found Kai still holding the will in his hand. He told Kai that the pension had already been paid, and the original copy of the will had already been sent back. At that moment, threw herself into a great-grandfather's embrace, sobbing uncontrollably. Xiang Yu calmly told her that an ordinary soldier knew to use his own blood and life to defend humanity's territory. To protect his family, he gave up his precious life, and to not be a burden to the Alliance, he chose to commit suicide. And as the reincarnation saintess with such talent, was she really going to stay in the wounded barracks? Killing an enemy meant reducing one of the enemy's attacks, which meant reducing the number of deaths and injuries. She should pour her strength into the battlefield. As long as the demons didn't retreat, the tragedy wouldn't end. When once again stood on the walls of the Exorcist mountain pass, the fear in her heart had completely transformed into hatred and loathing for the demons. The killing intent of the Grim Reaper's scythe finally descended once more. Like black lightning, a figure rushed out horizontally, and wherever it passed, a large number of low-level demons were instantly destroyed. Was like a black specter. Wherever there were the most enemies, where the situation was the most dangerous, she would appear. The Grim Reaper's scythe was invincible. It was unknown how many demons had died to this divine weapon of hers. The Grim Reaper's scythe swung horizontally, scattering a dark golden lightning. Er's body finally stopped. Her gaze landed on a powerful demon bird, whose entire body was emitting a dark golden luster. This demon bird's cultivation was at least at the 7th rank. The lightning spear in its hand was aimed at from afar, lightning coiling around its body. The wings on its back flapped, and it floated in the air not far from the Exorcist mountain pass. An icy chill flashed in Er's eyes, and in the next moment, her figure disappeared into thin air. The terrifying killing intent caused the surrounding light to visibly dim. The powerful, dark gold demon bird thrust its spear behind itself almost immediately. Ding! Poochie! The dark golden spear was already close to the might of a human legend rank weapon, but under that pitch-black blade of light, it was sliced apart like tofu. The huge dark scythe cut through its shoulder, cutting its entire body in half. And at this moment, Er's figure appeared in the air. They were both at the 7th rank, but in front of her, a 7th rank demon bird wasn't a threat at all. Her attack power was so formidable that even Long Haochen at the 7th rank couldn't compare to it, let alone these demons. Just as she killed this demon bird, suddenly, an indescribable sense of danger assaulted her heart. Her figure turned halfway, looking in the direction of the demon army. At least 100 rays of light instantly condensed, shooting straight towards Er's direction. These rays of light enveloped an extremely large area, and even with Er's speed, it was already too late to dodge. Not only that, besides these rays of light, there were also countless huge fireballs, like a meteor shower, attacking her. It was very clear that the previous demon bird had the effect of a primer, luring her out of the Exorcist mountain pass. Wasn't it the Demon Eye Warlock and the Flame Demon Mantis who launched the surprise attack? They had at least 200 people, and as soon as appeared, they immediately launched their attack. This wasn't the first day that appeared on the Exorcist mountain pass's wall. Every time she appeared, the demons would suffer huge losses. Just the experts of the 6th rank and above demons, had already killed nearly 100 of them, and among them there were even 3 at the 8th rank. This kind of loss had long since made the demons set their eyes on her. At the same time, it also made famous in the Exorcist mountain pass as the reincarnation saintess. Facing these spells filled with dark aura, didn't panic in the slightest. Her body slightly curled up, and then a layer of hazy black mist appeared around her body. The death god scythe was raised high above her head, descending from the sky, and made a chopping motion. That's right, didn't dodge, but rather made such a simple movement. It could be clearly seen that the moment the death god's scythe chopped down from the sky, Er's body unexpectedly disappeared, and the death god's scythe also disappeared. What remained was only a huge light blade. The surrounding air instantly distorted, and a large number of magic rays were directly refracted by that distorted radiance, scattering in all directions. At the same time, that huge light blade had already broken through the air, forcibly cutting a path through the concentrated magic rays. This was the power of the death god scythe. Although the current Kai only had the cultivation base of the 7th rank, but by relying on the death god scythe, she could achieve a small area similar to the might of a domain. All the enemy's attacks would be compressed, gathered, and then broken. The death god scythe had many characteristics, among which the two most formidable ones were unstoppable and purification. Unstoppable wasn't just a saying. The sharp death god's aura forcibly cut through all the magic rays, and in front of the death god scythe, these magic rays simply couldn't display the superimposed effect after being shot. Kai, Er's figure once again appeared, a pair of spiritual wings that were much larger than before flapping, bringing her body back to the top of the city wall. Although she very much wanted to rush into the demon army below to behead these magic demons, her reason told her not to do so. Just as Kai, Er's body, was about to return to the top of the Exorcist mountain pass, suddenly her body froze for a moment, and then her whole body felt as if it had fallen into a viscous liquid. This feeling was very uncomfortable. Her body suddenly became sluggish, and even her own spiritual power was greatly compressed in that instant. What's going on? Kai, Er's heart was shocked, and she subconsciously poured spiritual power into the death god scythe. Also at this time, a mournful black light broke through the air, and its target was the space between her eyebrows. This black light was extremely fast, so fast that it was too much for the eyes to follow. What's more, at this time, Kai Er's body was in the process of being restrained, and even if she wanted to resist with all her strength, it was already impossible. An enemy sneak attack. This was the first thought in Kai Er's heart, but what shocked her was that, with her perception and the death god scythe's killing intent, she unexpectedly didn't discover the enemy's existence. This thought only flashed in her mind, and all she could do was to hold the death god's scythe in her hand horizontally and quickly block in front of her. Ding! In the ear-piercing sound of an explosion, Kai only felt as if she had been hit by a giant awl, and with a muffled groan, blood immediately overflowed from her mouth and nose. Relying on the power of the death god scythe, although it was only the blade surface that blocked the enemy's attack, it was still able to completely cancel out the enemy's attribute attack. But even so, it was impossible to completely dissolve the enemy's powerful spiritual power attack. Kai intuitively felt as if her internal organs were burning, and the two hands that were holding the death god's scythe almost instantly lost feeling. The most frightening thing was, after receiving such an intense attack, her body unexpectedly didn't fly out, but was still restrained by that extremely strong stickiness, and the enemy's second attack had already arrived. It could be said that Kai had already reached an extremely critical juncture. Through the first attack, just now, she had already determined that the enemy who sneak attacked her was a 9th stage powerhouse, and only a 9th stage powerhouse could rely on their powerful spiritual power to not be discovered by her, and also produce such a powerful attack. That stickiness should be the enemy's domain. On the Exorcist mountain pass, Shengyu had been constantly observing Kai Er's movements, and suddenly saw Kai Er's body freeze in the air, followed by that smear of black light. Shengyu realized that things were not good. But everything really happened too quickly, and even with his cultivation, it was already too late to save Kai Er. The ear-piercing sound of breaking air caused the movements of the soldiers on both sides to become sluggish. They were shocked to see that, from the direction of the Exorcist mountain pass, the sky unexpectedly split open, and this big hole was still expanding, directly slashing towards Kai Er's side, attacking the enemy to save. Shengyu's mind was very clear. The enemy's second attack, Kai definitely wouldn't be able to withstand it, and no matter how fast he was, he wouldn't be able to stop the enemy's attack in time. so he could only lock his target on the enemy. If the enemy's attack killed Kai, then his all-out attack would be enough to heavily injure the enemy. And also at this time, no one expected that Kai wouldn't resign herself to death. Her hands were already numb, and her body was still restrained by the domain. But she still effectively launched an action to save herself. A thick layer of black flashed in Kai-Er's eyes, and her body unexpectedly disappeared with a whoosh. Meanwhile, the Grim Reaper's scythe instantly exploded with an incomparably terrifying and dense killing intent, causing the invisible and colorless viscous domain to suddenly be sliced open. The Grim Reaper's scythe also made use of this crack to drill out of Sheng Yu's expectations, the enemy that launched a sneak attack on Kai, didn't care about his attack at all, and the pitch-black blade of light didn't retract its second attack, but fell on the death scythe. Amidst the ear-piercing sounds of friction and collision, the death scythe violently trembled, producing an intense, buzzing sound. Just as it left the viscous domain, Kai was forcibly jolted out of the death scythe. That's right, at that moment, she had fused with the death scythe, and the two fused as one. This was also one of the death scythe's powerful abilities. There was a small space in this artifact, and in times of crisis, Kai could hide in it, using it to avoid the enemy's powerful attacks and rely on the death scythe's tough materials to protect herself. It was precisely because of the existence of this ability that Sheng Yu was at ease to let Kai charge on the battlefield. But the enemy's attack just now was also powerful enough to forcibly jolt Kai out of the death scythe. Kai-Er's face became even paler, and it was impossible for her not to be injured in that violent shock. However, her numb arms had already recovered, and ice-cold killing intent erupted from her body like a volcanic eruption. The surrounding sky instantly darkened, and a dignified black figure flashed and disappeared behind her. Then, a mournful ray of light streaked across the sky. Death Scythe's 7 ultimate, first ultimate, Death's Downfall. Kai had already mastered this attack perfectly. The moment the terrifying Death Scythe's aura burst forth, the surrounding space suddenly collapsed, and the enemy who had ambushed her finally appeared out of thin air. It was an enemy who was thin and small, and looked no different from a human. His entire body looked a little illusory, but when he appeared, his entire body was filled with a mysterious aura. Sheng Yu's attack was blocked in midair, and a majestic figure appeared in the middle of the sky. Sheng Yu was very familiar with this enemy. It was the Flaming Lion and Luoxian, who was ranked 52nd among the 72 demon god pillars of the demons. The Flaming Demon Mantis was also one of his clansmen. In this head-on clash with Sheng Yu, it was clear that Luoxian was the first to suffer. There was a deep wound that was more than an inch deep on his chest, but in the end he had still managed to block Sheng Yu's all-out attack. However, what Luoxian didn't expect was that his comrade would fail to kill Kai-Er. Instead, he would be the one being attacked. There was a loud clang, and the body of the thin black demons trembled violently. The weapon in his left hand had already been shattered into pieces. However, at the critical moment, his body suddenly split into two. One of his figures was ground into dust by Death Scythe, while the other figure retreated 50 meters. This was a skill similar to the cicada shedding its carapace. It was used to neutralize Death Scythe. Clearly, he wasn't willing to go head-on against Kai-Er's scythe of the god of death. It wasn't that Kai-Er's attack power was enough to threaten him, but that he didn't want to be assaulted by the powerful purification power of the scythe of the god of death. "Go!" the black demons shouted in a low voice. They took a step forward and disappeared into thin air. The Flaming Lion and Luoxian didn't stop. His body was like a fiery meteor as he returned to where the demons were. Sheng Yu didn't chase after him. Instead, he quickly went to Kai-Er's side, shielding his great-granddaughter behind him. His eyes scanned the surroundings vigilantly. Without a doubt, the ones who launched a sneak attack on Kai-Er were the two demon gods. In order to deal with Kai-Er The demons actually sent 2 demon gods to attack. Moreover, they almost succeeded. Kaya was gasping for breath. Blocking the enemy's attack and using the 7 absolutes of the god of death had put a huge burden on her. She was already injured. Just as Xingyu was about to check on Kai, Er's injuries, his eyes revealed a shocked expression, because a golden light was flying over from afar at an astonishing speed. Its target wasn't the top of the Exorcist mountain pass, but the path Luoxian had to take to return to the demons. This mass of golden light came too fast. The intense light attribute was like the sun had fallen from the sky. The extremely intense light element aura illuminated the entire sky. The demons below and the human powerhouses on top of the Exorcist mountain pass couldn't help but look at the sudden appearance of the golden light. This golden light transformed from a tiny dot of light to a figure in half a breath's time. When it was less than 100 meters away from Luoxian, the surging orange light erupted like a geyser. One could clearly see a huge orange shield directly colliding with Luoxian. Xingyu's eyes suddenly lit up. Almost at the same time, he disappeared into thin air. The instant before he disappeared, he gestured to Kai, to retreat. At this moment, Luoxian was a little depressed. In order to save his granddaughter, Xingyu had erupted with his full strength. It wasn't that easy to block. Although Luoxian was also a 9th rank demon god, he was ranked 52nd. It could be seen that his cultivation was relatively weak among the demon gods. His internal spiritual energy was equivalent to a human's several 100,000, which was inferior to Xingyu's. In terms of weapons, he was naturally inferior. Chapter 184. Xingyu's Lingang had not only injured the surface of his body, but at the same time, the murderous aura of spiritual energy and the sharp aura of the Lingang had also drilled into his body. He wouldn't be able to recover without at least 10 days or half a month of recuperation. Just as he was about to retreat and return to his original position, he suddenly felt an enormous aura of light approaching. Furthermore, the other party had clearly locked onto him. Where did this aura of light come from? It didn't originate from the Exorcist mountain pass, and Luoxian was shocked and didn't dare to be negligent. An enormous flame suddenly burst forth from his body. His disheveled hair fluttered despite the absence of wind, and tyrannical spiritual energy fluctuations blossomed from his body. In his right hand, a serrated longsword appeared. It went straight for the enemy who had launched a surprise attack, and Luoxian originally had 2 swords, but his other longsword had just been smashed by Xingyu. Even a demon god didn't necessarily have a powerful weapon, and he often changed his weapons. The pair of long swords in his hands were merely legendary grade equipment. Compared to the pair of epic grade daggers in Xingyu's hands, there was a huge difference. The moment the huge orange shield was about to collide with Luoxian, it suddenly stopped. Immediately after, Luoxian was horrified to discover that there was an incomparably sharp aura coming from the other party's shield. That powerful force of will did not attack his body, but attacked his mental power, and Luoxian felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. It was as if the sharp intent was trying to mess up his thoughts. Under such circumstances, the power of the serrated flaming sword he had slashed out suddenly weakened a little. Boom! The orange light collided, and under the violent collision, the golden figure that was like a meteor chasing after the moon revealed its true form. In the violent collision, neither he nor Luoxian gained the upper hand, and both were forced to retreat. However, Luoxian's situation was clearly worse. When the orange shield collided with his serrated sword, the other party's strength was great, but he could still resist it with his cultivation. However, an incomparably pure explosive power of the light element came from the shield. It was the light attribute Lingang. Not only that, but an extremely sharp willpower also erupted at the same time. And Luoxian was already injured before, and suddenly suffering such a collision naturally worsened his injuries. His whole body burst into flames, and intense flames even dyed the sky red. However, what made him feel at ease was that he could already clearly see a pitch-black light flickering behind the rider on the back of a majestic starlit unicorn. The demon powerhouse who had attacked Kai, together with him, had also turned back to attack Kair. After the collision, just as the old force dissipated and the new force had not yet recovered, he launched a sneak attack. The knight, whose whole body was shrouded in orange light, had clearly anticipated this. He turned around at lightning speed, and the moment he collided with the dark short sword, his whole body froze in place in the distance. Ding! With a crisp sound, the orange knight's whole body shone with a golden light, and his body, along with the starlight unicorn, retreated in the air. Orange-red halos burst out from his shield. It was obvious that he did not have an easy time withstanding this attack. But at this moment, the flaming lion and Luoxian had already opened his mouth wide, and the dark tip of the sword had quietly emerged from his chest. All assassins were good at seizing opportunities, and this was obviously not unique to the demons who were constantly shuttling through space. As the master of the Assassin Temple and a 9th-grade hero, how could Xingyu not be good at this? The powerful knight, who was wearing the golden foundation armor, had attracted the attention of the 2 demon gods. Meanwhile, Xingyu had long since escaped into space in the distance. The cooperation between an assassin and a knight had existed since ancient times in the Temple League. When the knight on a golden pedestal and Luoxian collided, although Shanyu did not know what Luoxian would do, he instinctively believed that the knight would definitely create an opportunity for him to launch a sneak attack. In fact, this was indeed the case, and Luoxian's thoughts were disrupted by the powerful sword intent that the knight on a golden pedestal had unleashed with his mental strength, and his internal injuries had been aggravated. When he saw the knight being attacked by his comrade, he had relaxed. This was when Luoxian was at his weakest. Shengyu's attack was just a beat slower than that of the demons. This ingenious delay had resulted in a massacre. Boom! And Luoxian, the flaming lion demon, was sent flying as he screamed in pain. A demon god's body was indeed strong. Even when Shengyu unleashed his full strength, and Luoxian's body did not shatter into pieces. However, a large hole about a foot in diameter had appeared in his chest. It seemed like he was not going to survive. However, chivalrous Xingyu had no intention of letting Luoxian go. The dagger in his other hand pierced into the back of Luoxian's head at the same time as the explosion. A demon god's life force was extremely strong, especially when the demon god pillar was nearby. Therefore, he had to kill his opponent completely to ensure Luoxian's death. And Luoxian died a wrongful death. He never expected that his sneak attack would turn into a counterattack. He did not even have time to borrow the power of his demon god pillar before he was fatally injured. When the same explosion appeared in his head, the last trace of his life force was also gone. Shangyu was much more experienced than Long Haochen and the others. Once Luoxian died, his demon god crown was sealed in Luoxian's body by Shengyu's spiritual power before his demon god crown could escape. He would use it when he returned. If the demon god crown could not escape, it would be much more difficult for the flaming lion demon to recreate the demons. It would take at least a year for the demon god pillar to recover its vitality and give birth to a demon god seed to choose a successor. If the demon god crown returned, it would immediately be able to find a successor among the demons. It would also be able to bestow a portion of Mr. and Luoxian's strength to this successor. Speaking of which, when Long Haochen and the others killed the snake demon god, Andamari's demon god crown had been eaten by Haoyue. Long Haochen did not know how well Haoyue had digested it. Just as Shengyu's second attack was about to be unleashed, on the other side, an orange-red shield wall once again blocked the demon god assassin, preventing him from rushing over to the flaming lion demon's rescue. The entire battle seemed to have taken a long time to describe, but in reality, it had unfolded in the blink of an eye. From the moment the 2 demon gods ambushed Kai, to the moment the flaming lion demon and Luoxian perished, only a few blinks of an eye had passed. In such a short period of time, when both sides were roughly equal in strength, apart from the sudden arrival of the knight on a golden pedestal, they were able to kill a demon god because of the cooperation between the demon god and Xingyu. This was their first time working together, but there was an invisible, tacit understanding between them. They had full trust in each other, which was why they were able to achieve such a good result. The knight on a golden pedestal was riding on his starlight unicorn, constantly retreating in the air. Every time he retreated, the orange-red glow on his shield grew stronger. Shield wall plus divine block plus continuous block. He had perfectly displayed the profound meaning of the guardian knight. Although the enemy's every attack consumed an enormous amount of his spiritual energy, in such a short period of time, the enemy did not have the time to erupt with an even more powerful attack. He could only look on helplessly as Luo Xian perished under Shang Yu's sword. In the distant demon camp, apart from the flaming lion demon's demon god pillar, the other 7 demon god pillars simultaneously shone brightly. As for the exorcist mountain pass, the sky suddenly distorted. An extremely swift and fierce murderous aura, like a large net, welcomed the advance of the demon gods. The black silhouette of the knight on a golden pedestal abruptly flashed backwards, escaping into the air and disappearing without a trace. The battlefield in the sky was closer to the exorcist mountain pass, and the reinforcements of the assassin temple were clearly a bit faster than the demon gods. If he did not leave now, he would end up like in Luo Xian, forever staying here. One should never think that a battle between powerhouses of the 9th step would be incomparably long. The stronger one's strength, the more dangerous the collision would be. Unless one had a terrifying defense like the Bear Veilfar, otherwise in a collision between powerhouses of the 9th step, life or death would often be decided in an instant. Withdrawing the shield wall, the knight on a golden pedestal let out a low groan and spat out a mouthful of turbid air. Resisting the continuous attacks of the demon god assassin was not an easy task. If not for the starlight unicorn and the epic-ranked golden foundation armor on his body providing sufficient spiritual energy support, allowing his defense to maintain at the level of Lingang, at most 3 attacks, his spiritual energy might not be able to support such a high-intensity defense. A powerhouse of the 9th step, moreover an assassin who specialized in offense. How terrifying was his attack power! If it was really a one-on-one confrontation, the knight on a golden pedestal would definitely be in danger. Of course, that was under the condition that he did not intend to escape and only wanted to fight to the death. He and Shang Yu did not retreat, but instead looked at the distant demon god pillars. The air around them distorted even more violently, but not a single figure appeared. The flaming demon lion and Luoxian's corpse was in Shang Yu's hands. The demon god crown of a demon god was a treasure, and with it he could at least continuously fire a magic cannon for 3 years without running out of supplies. Or use it to create epic-ranked equipment. Woo woo! The horn for the demons to retreat sounded, and the madly attacking demon army immediately retreated like the tide, and the 7 shining demon god pillars in the distance also dimmed. Ha ha! Shang Yu laughed heartily. Delightful! Finally I can vent my anger. Shang Yu had a fiery temper, and after the Holy War he had been suppressed in the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Because both sides did not wish for the 9th step powerhouses to join the battlefield, which would lead to more large-scale casualties, the 9th step powerhouses only confronted each other and did not join the battlefield. Thus, no matter how anxious he was, he could not take the initiative to attack. Even mobilizing the city's defenses was done by Shang Lingxin. This great hero always had a feeling that he could not use his strength, and this feeling was not very comfortable. When Kai Er was suddenly attacked, Xing Yu, whose attention had always been on his great-granddaughter, was the first to act. Fortunately, his reaction was fast enough, otherwise Kai Er would really be in danger. Although the death scythe was powerful, the huge gap in cultivation was not something a weapon could completely make up for. To be precise, the more powerful a weapon was, the more powerhouses were needed to use it. so that it could truly display its advantages. As for the process of killing the flaming demon lion and Luoxian, even Xingyu himself felt that it was somewhat unreal. Perhaps in the history of the demons, and Luoxian was probably the demon god who had the easiest way of being killed. And Luoxian's death was not only because of the knight on a golden pedestal's obstruction and Xiangyu's surprise attack, but because he had underestimated the situation, and everything had happened too quickly. Otherwise, as long as he activated the distant demon god pillar, no matter what, he would not have been killed by Xingyu in a single strike. Unfortunately, in this world, assumptions were the most unreliable. Brother, thanks. This spoil of war belongs to you. Xingyu was not stingy at all as he handed an Luoxian's corpse to the knight on a golden pedestal. The knight on a golden pedestal's body stiffened. Greetings, Sir Hero. I cannot accept this. Acting Holy Knight of Knights Templars. Long Jingjin number 12, reporting for duty. That's right, this knight on a golden pedestal who had obstructed 2 demon gods in succession and created an opportunity for Xingyu to kill the flaming demon lion. Wasn't this Long Haochen? Long Haochen and Han, you swiftly traveled all the way to the Exorcist mountain pass. While they were still far away, Long Haochen's spiritual force sensed the great battle here. He had Hanyu enter the Exorcist mountain pass first, while he rode the Star King into the sky to see if he was needed. Although the mission Long Tianyin had given him wasn't too serious, as long as it was within his ability, Long Haochen would do his best to accumulate contribution points. When his attention was focused on the top of the Exorcist mountain pass, he almost instantly found Kai, who was fighting the enemy. The Grim Reaper scythe was the most direct target. Long Haochen was overjoyed. Just as he was about to fly down to meet up with Kai, the scene of Kai being ambushed appeared. What happened next was simple. Long Haochen and the Star King's strength fused as one, rushing down with all their strength, like a golden meteor rushing into the battlefield. There wasn't enough time to save Kai, but because of Kai-Er's crisis, Long Haochen was anxious and raised his strength to the limit. With his many years of battle experience, he had a rather accurate grasp of the battlefield. Seeing that Kai was fine, the 2 demon gods quickly retreated. The place where he appeared was in the enemy's path. That was the scene of the flaming demon lion being killed. Xingyu calling him brother made Long Haochen's eyelids twitch. This was messing up the seniority, so he hurriedly changed the topic. He wanted to hide his identity. Now, clearly wasn't a good time to say who he was. Hearing Long Haochen's voice and words, Xingyu's face immediately revealed a puzzled expression. This voice was very familiar, but he couldn't recognize it immediately. He could only hear that this Jingjin 12 wasn't very old. With his understanding of the Knights Templars, Jingjin 12's pedestal should be in the Knights Templars' treasury. Clearly, this Jingjin 12 was the newly promoted knight on a golden pedestal, but he also said that he was the acting Holy Knight Captain. The position of Holy Knight Captain was second only to the Temple Master and Deputy Temple Master in the Knights Templars. How could a newly promoted knight on a golden pedestal assume this position? However, no matter what doubts appeared in Xingyu's heart, he didn't doubt Long Haochen's identity in the slightest. He had already used his actions to prove it. Let's return to the city walls first. Xingyu waved his hand and flew together with Long Haochen towards the Exorcist mountain pass. The tyrannical killing intent and distorted fluctuations in the air also slowly retreated. The Exorcist mountain pass assassin temple didn't win this battle, but killing a demon god greatly boosted the morale of the soldiers of the Exorcist mountain pass. Xingyu flew to the front of the Exorcist mountain pass and suddenly lifted the corpse of the flame demon lion in his hand. Immediately, the Exorcist mountain pass walls erupted in cheers like a tsunami. Many soldiers were so excited that they shed tears. Silently looking at the Exorcist mountain pass that was already broken beyond recognition, Long Haochen only felt his heart tighten. As the fuse of this holy war, The Holy Alliance had never uttered a single word of complaint towards him. It was unknown how many soldiers of the Holy Alliance had died in this holy war. I will definitely destroy the demons and restore peace to the holy demon continent. There will be no more wars. Long Houchen secretly vowed in his heart. At the same time, he slowly began to chant an incantation. Xing Yu looked at Long Houchen in astonishment. He could feel that the knight on a golden pedestal's body began to emit extremely dense light element fluctuations. Moreover, this degree of purity of light element was something he had never seen before. Long Houchen's chanting voice was very gentle. The incantation's incantation tone was somewhat deep, but it wasn't suppressed in the slightest. The clear incantation was like a dancing spirit that constantly spat out. Around his body, a large number of golden specks of light began to surge. Xing Yu took a deep breath. His eyes couldn't help but reveal a deep sense of gratitude as he said in a low voice, "Don't force yourself." Long Houchen naturally couldn't answer him, but the incantation he was chanting became increasingly clear. Tiny specks of golden light began to appear around his body. At the beginning, there were only a few dozen of them, and each one was only the size of a soybean. They were unremarkable, but as the light specks continued to increase, everyone was shocked to feel that there seemed to be an additional circle in the sky that could attract all the light attribute in the world. In the sky, near and far, similar specks of light began to appear. They rapidly gathered around Long Houchen's body. Once these specks of light gathered around him, they spiraled into the sky. Xiang Yu didn't retreat to the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass's city wall. Instead, he flew into the distance. The demons were paying a price for the Exorcist Mountain Pass, so he had to guarantee Long Houchen's safety. What would he do if another sneak attack from the demons appeared? It wasn't just him. Xing Yu didn't even need to issue an order. One after another, distorted figures of light quietly swept out from the top of the city walls. Together with Xiang Yu, they formed a barrier in midair outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Together, they protected Long Houchen, who was continuously chanting the incantation. At this very moment, Long Houchen only felt that his heart was extremely clear. It was as if only by continuously chanting this difficult and lengthy incantation could he weaken the guilt in his heart. He entered a wonderful state. When the incantation started, the spiritual energy in his body was rapidly draining away. The spiritual energy that he had used to block the two great demon gods showed signs of drying up very quickly. However, when golden specks of light began to merge with him in the distant sky, he was astonished to discover that the spiritual energy in his body didn't decrease, but instead rose. It was rising at a slow and steady speed. He had originally planned to chant half of the incantation, so the half-completed incantation naturally continued. At this moment, his spiritual energy and senses were no longer on his own body. Rather, they had merged with the sky, merging with nature and the light element. For the first time, Long Houchen experienced the realm of God that Yi Xiaolei had talked about in the illusory paradise. God was everywhere, but also nowhere to be found. He was now not a caster of magic, but a conductor, commanding the power of God, commanding the light element. The God-favored made him a fulcrum. The emotions of kindness, sorrow, and devotion in his heart became his baton. He deeply experienced the righteousness, peace, kindness, integration, sacrifice, compassion, tolerance, and benevolence of the light element. At this moment, his emotions reached true harmony with the light. At this moment, he had truly become the son of light. The power of light never existed for the sake of killing. Therefore, even if Long Houchen became as strong as the demon emperor in the future, he would not be able to command the light element during an attack like this. But the magic he was casting now was different. It was a release based entirely on unity, tolerance, benevolence, and kindness. Without the slightest bit of selfishness or distracting thoughts, there was only a compassionate heart that wanted to help others at all costs. The spiral-shaped golden specks of light gradually rose into the sky, turning into a huge golden pillar of light with a diameter of more than 100 meters, connecting heaven and earth. At this moment, the demon god pillars in the distant demon camp were completely overshadowed by this golden pillar of light. The surging light element that rose to the sky caused all the demons to tremble. Although they could feel that this light was not aimed at them, as the demons of the dark element, they still felt an uncontrollable panic. Apart from this golden pillar of light, there was no other grand phenomenon. Finally, Long Houchin finished chanting the last syllable. From his body, a dazzling golden light suddenly bloomed with a 7-colored luster. His and the brilliant unicorn's spiritual power, which had been restored to its peak, was completely drained in an instant. However, they were still floating in the air, and their eyes became unprecedentedly bright. The sky turned golden. As far as the eye could see, everything turned golden. Faint golden raindrops began to fall from the sky, slowly drifting down. The raindrops were fine, and wherever they fell, they gave people a kind of gentle feeling. Every raindrop that fell on a person's body would turn into a very faint halo, quietly dispersing. Every raindrop also brought people a trace of gentle warmth. At the beginning, these traces of warmth weren't enough, but very quickly, people discovered that these gentle raindrops brought them an indescribable sense of comfort and tranquility. So much so that everyone would unconsciously look at Long Houchin, who was riding the brilliant star Unicorn King in the air. Each and every one of them gradually calmed down from excitement, and from calmness back to excitement again. It was unknown how many emotions were surging within them. In the eyes of many low-level soldiers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, the current Long Houchin was like a radiant god that had descended, bestowing warmth upon them, sweeping away their fatigue and pain. A kind of feeling that was close to faith practically took root in their hearts in an instant. The area covered by this fine rain of light was really too large. Not only did it cover the entire Exorcist Mountain Pass, it even covered the battlefield as well as the distant demon camp. The demon god pillar once again shone. To humans, it was an infinitely beautiful radiance, but to demons, it was a fatal disaster. 7, similarly emitting an intense aura of darkness, soared into the sky. With these 7 light pillars as the fulcrum, they formed a dark red light barrier that enveloped the entire demon camp. Without a doubt, the magic Long Houchin had just completed was a forbidden spell. Moreover, its area of effect was so large that even Xingyu had never seen it before. At the same time, this magic was also the most gentle forbidden spell that Xingyu had ever seen. The 9th-step saints of the Temple of the Priests were also able to cast large-scale forbidden spell healing magic. However, the effect of their healing magic was much more direct than Long Houchin's, and the effect was also seemingly greater. Only, it wasn't as gentle as Long Houchin's magic, and its area of effect was also far smaller. To be able to cover a third of the Exorcist Mountain Pass was already something that only the apex experts of the Temple of the Priests could accomplish. However, this forbidden spell of Long Houchin was like a rain. Xingyu had a very profound feeling. Bathing in this rain of light, not only did his body benefit, but also his spirit. This cleansing of the spirit, the treatment of inner wounds, was not the slightest bit inferior to the recovery of the body and the healing of injuries. The negative emotions in the hearts of the soldiers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass quietly disappeared under this rain of light, and the injuries on their bodies also healed at a slow pace. Gradually, some of the soldiers began to kneel down on one knee towards Long Houchin in the air, performing their most noble etiquette. And this scene also spread at an astonishing speed above the walls of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. It wasn't only the low-level soldiers who knelt down. Even some experts of the 5th and 6th step were the same. They were completely infected by the spiritual emotions contained in this rain of light. Those who could still stand were those with relatively strong spiritual energy, and their hearts were strong enough to defend themselves. At the same time, they were also a minority of people who weren't affected by the war. Like a miracle, the rain of light descended. Within the Exorcist Mountain Pass, there was basically no need for the commander to issue an order. A large number of injured people were quickly carried to the open space and bathed in the rain of light. Because of this sudden rain of light, the entire Exorcist Mountain Pass was covered in a faint layer of gold. On the light barrier jointly released by the 7 great demon gods, small golden ripples also appeared, and their light barrier that was filled with dark aura was also constantly purified by these golden ripples. The 7 great demon gods were all floating in front of their respective demon god pillars, their complexions grim. At this moment, they didn't feel like they were fighting against a light attribute forbidden spell, but rather they felt like they were fighting against heaven's might, a heaven's might that was filled with essence energy. Kai was also the same as the others, standing at the top of the wall, looking at the distant night on a golden pedestal in the air. She obviously wouldn't kneel down, but her eyes were already moist, and tears couldn't help but flow down her cheeks. Bathed in this rain of light, the injuries she had previously received gradually improved, and the oppressive feeling in her heart also quietly disappeared. If there was only one person in the Exorcist Mountain Pass who could recognize who this knight on a golden pedestal was, then, without a doubt, that person would definitely be her. She didn't recognize his aura, but she recognized the shield that they had obtained together in the gloomy swamp through life and death. It was spiral-shaped like a snail shell, and it was filled with the aura of pure light, and it had an epic red-orange luster. Wasn't this the shield of Sun Moon Divine Snail? It's him. He's here. He's finally here. At this moment, Kai only felt as if her heart was completely pulled by Long Houchin in the air. The memories buried in the depths of her mind finally moved, and with all her might, it wanted to rush out. The seal that had been fiercely suppressing her memories also seemed to loosen a bit. Why? Why don't you let me remember him? Why? The tears in Kai's eyes flowed even faster. Looking at Long Houchin in the air, her heart was fiercely aching. This divine rain of light persisted for no less than an hour. The golden color in the sky gradually dispersed, and the warm sunlight sprinkled on the earth. On the Exorcist Mountain Pass, cheers that were twice as loud as when Flaming Devil Lion and Luosien had been killed erupted once again. The Star King spread his wings and glided down to the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Shang Yu's figure flickered, and he quickly arrived at Long Houchin's side. But he was astonished to discover that after casting such a powerful forbidden spell, the aura of light emitted by Long Houchin's body was even denser than before. Although he couldn't sense any spiritual power fluctuations from his body, it was as if he and his Starlight Unicorn had been sent to the Exorcist Mountain Pass by the light elements, and the elemental power supported their bodies. This was a kind of realm, a realm that Shan Yu had never felt before. The spell Long Houchin had just cast was called Divine Rain. This light forbidden spell was something he had discovered while cultivating in the Cave of Illusion. In terms of healing effects, this night's light forbidden spell couldn't compare to the light forbidden spells of the Temple of the Priests. After all, the knight wasn't a professional healer. However, this Divine Rain spell had its own characteristics. The light rain that Divine Rain triggered was gentler and easier to absorb during healing. Moreover, the healing time was long. By relying on the prolonged healing, not only could it greatly boost the morale of one side, but it could also restore the physical strength of the person bathed in it. At the same time, it could purify the negative emotions in one's heart. In other words, in terms of single healing, Divine Rain couldn't compare to other forbidden spells, but it had many uses. Moreover, Divine Rain could only chant a third of the incantation or half of the incantation to activate the second forbidden spell, Divine Rain. In other words, this was a spell that could evolve, and according to the strength of the caster, it would emit different levels of healing effects. Of course, even if it was Divine Rain, it was still an 8th grade spell of the Guardian Knight. After all, It was an area of effect healing. But the divine rain spell that Long Houchin had just cast, in terms of area of effect, purity of light elements, and overall effect, far surpassed the original scope of divine rain. That instant of enlightenment and the ignition of his emotions, in addition to the activation of his God's favored constitution, allowed this spell to be cast almost perfectly. Even among the 5 demon pillars of the demons, perhaps only the demon emperor, the moon demon, and the star demon could cast it. The experts of the assassin temple responsible for protecting Long Houchin in the air returned to the top of the Exorcist mountain pass. On top of the wall, Shang Lingxin had already commanded the officers and soldiers to give way to Long Houchin. When he landed on top of the wall, the experts of the assassin temple all subconsciously surrounded him. After casting such a powerful forbidden spell, they were very clear that the knight on a golden pedestal was in a weakened state. The more he was like this, the more they couldn't give the demons any chance to take advantage of him. Of course, looking at it now, the demons really didn't have the strength to mount a sneak attack. When the rain of light ended, the dark red light barrier released by the 7 demon gods was already very dim. Although the demon god pillars were powerful, their main function was to strengthen the demon gods themselves. This kind of large-scale defense consumed a lot of magic power. They weren't fighting against Long Houchin, but heaven's might. The Star King floated to the ground and folded his wings. The first thing he did was to turn his head to look at Long Houchin on his back. His clear big eyes were filled with reverence and gentleness. "Master, thank you." The Star King called him Master wholeheartedly. He followed Long Houchin because of Long Houchin's identity as the Son of Light, not because he approved of Long Houchin himself. It was only because Long Houchin's pure light attribute would bring great benefits to him. Moreover, he could feel Long Houchin's kindness. After following Long Houchin back to the dragon resisting pass, the Star King wasn't in a good mood. What he saw was the Son of Light killing. Although the ones he was killing were demons, his hands were still stained with blood. But during this period of time, the Star King was truly subdued by Long Houchin. He was Long Houchin's mount, so when he cast the divine rain, it was undoubtedly the clearest and strongest feeling, including all the emotional changes of Long Houchin. When Long Houchin cast this magic, he didn't consider the state of his body at all. His kindness deeply moved the Star King, the kindest light demon beast. Soon after, under the influence of the divine rain, the Star King also felt it the most. Shang Yu felt that realm, and so did the Star King. And to him, that realm belonged to the Holy Unicorn. If one looked closely, they would discover that the roots of the white fur on the Star King's body already had a faint golden color. This was a sign that he had begun to evolve into a holy unicorn. He believed that as long as he followed Long Houchin, it wouldn't take long for him to succeed in his evolution. Long Houchin jumped down from the Star King's back. At this moment, the spiritual power in his body, including the spiritual power stored in the golden foundation armor, could be said to be exhausted. However, he surprisingly didn't feel weak at all. Right now, he was more like an ordinary person with strong spiritual power. Moreover, the spiritual power he had consumed was quietly recovering. He didn't need to do anything. The light elements from the outside world would automatically enter his body. Moreover, the light elements that dared to enter him were all of the purest kind. It seemed that the light elements with impurities were too embarrassed to come close to him. This saved Long Houchin from having to filter the light elements when he absorbed them. There were a total of 11 people from the assassin temple surrounding Long Houchin, including Xingyu. Other than Xingyu, the others were wrapped in black clothes, including their heads. Their bodies, without exception, emitted a magnificent aura.